Welcome to How to Enjoy Your Life and Your Job, Finding Balance and Joy in Work and Everyday Life, brought to you by Mindful Literary. In this audiobook, we embark on a journey to discover the secrets of happiness, balance, and joy in both our professional and personal lives. You'll explore practical strategies for stress relief, time management, and self-care, while learning how to cultivate meaningful relationships and a fulfilling career. Whether you're struggling with work-life balance or seeking more joy in your daily tasks, this guide offers insights and techniques to transform your approach to life and work. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Pursuit of Happiness. Understanding happiness. Happiness, a word we hear so often, seems to hang in the air like the scent of freshly baked bread, comforting yet elusive. I never thought much about it until the day I stumbled upon an old journal of mine. Flipping through its pages, I was greeted with snippets of my life, laugh-out-loud moments with close friends, quiet afternoons spent in nature, and times of pure contentment, like sipping coffee on a rainy day. Through these fragments, I began to realize that happiness is not a fixed destination, but a journey woven from countless fleeting moments. Psychologists define happiness in various ways. Some view it as a state of well-being, while others equate it with life satisfaction. There's even a term for the pursuit of happiness, hedonic adaptation, where we adjust to our circumstances and often find ourselves wanting more. I've felt this myself. My joy from landing my dream job was overshadowed merely weeks later by new ambitions and desires. This shifting nature of happiness can be frustrating, yet it also presents a valuable lesson. Genuine happiness emerges not from chasing permanence but from embracing the ephemeral. As I navigate through life, I've found that happiness often creeps in when I least expect it, like a surprise guest at a party. Whether it's a spontaneous road trip with friends, the warmth of a loved one's hug, or even a quiet moment of gratitude, these instances remind me to be present. My journey of understanding happiness isn't about ignoring the hardships. After all, life isn't a constant stream of joy, but rather about recognizing the beauty in the contrast. I invite you to join me in this exploration, to take note of your own moments of joy, however fleeting. It's in these reflections that we might uncover a deeper understanding of what it means to be truly happy. But as I sat there, reflecting on my journey, a nagging thought crept in. What if the lens through which I defined happiness was too narrow? I realized that many of us have a habit of measuring happiness against societal benchmarks. Career success, wealth, relationships. What if the true essence of happiness lies beyond these superficial markers? Perhaps it is time to peel back those layers and confront the uncomfortable truth lurking beneath my own encounters. In navigating this complex landscape, I discovered that my appreciation for happiness changes as I grow. What once brought me joy may no longer resonate within me. This evolution is a testament to our capacity for growth, but it also breeds uncertainty. How can one genuinely locate and savor happiness when the very definition shifts beneath our feet? As I pieced these insights together, combining personal anecdotes with research, I understood that acknowledging my own struggles was essential in this pursuit. The closer I looked, the more I understood that happiness isn't a one-size-fits-all situation. It's a deeply personal experience, influenced by our backgrounds, dreams, and even our failures. So here I am, inviting you to reflect alongside me. As we unravel our individual stories, let's remain open to the idea that happiness might just be waiting, in the laughter shared with a stranger, the first sip of a fresh brew, or the stillness of an evening sky. Yet, I also recognize the tension that comes with the uncertainty of this journey. Clarity may come and go, but so often it's the suspense in the pursuit that makes these little victories worthwhile. And in the end, isn't that what we all really want? To feel, to connect, and to discover joy in the unlikeliest of places? My journey to self-discovery. As I sit in my favorite cafe, the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee envelopes me, reminding me of the countless hours I've spent pondering over the complexities of life. The journey to self-discovery isn't a straight path. It's a winding road filled with forks and unexpected detours. I remember a time when I felt lost, a college freshman staring blankly at the course catalog as if the answers to my existence were somehow hidden among the course codes. Like many of us, I grappled with self-doubt, often haunted by a persistent question: who am I really? It was during a particularly overwhelming semester that I decided to join a volunteering group that worked with underprivileged children. At first, I simply wanted to fill my time, to pad my resume, but what began as a mere distraction turned into a life-altering experience. The laughter of those children, the sparkle of hope in their eyes, stirred something deep within me. Every moment spent with them peeled away the layers of insecurity that had cloaked me. I discovered a passion for teaching and nurturing, a passion I had never acknowledged, underscored by the realization that I found genuine joy in helping others. Yet, the path to self-discovery is never straightforward. I remember the late-night conversations with myself, grappling with the fear of making the wrong choices. I can almost hear the clock ticking away as I considered my next steps. I decided to prioritize introspection, committing to journal my thoughts daily. This simple act transformed the chaos within. It became a mirror reflecting my values, aspirations, and fears. I learned to embrace silence, allowing myself to feel the weight of my emotions, both good and bad. When I finally took a brave leap into pursuing education as a career, it felt liberating, a choice fueled by passion rather than mere practicality. As I embarked on this new adventure, the excitement was palpable, but so was the fear of failure. What if I wasn't good enough? What if I couldn't connect with my students? But with each passing day, I gathered pieces of myself I never knew existed. Hours spent in classrooms, shaping minds and witnessing aha moments became my anchor. And just when I thought I had found my footing, life threw me a curveball, a family emergency that required my attention and made me question everything yet again. I remember the panic that surged through me as I juggled responsibilities and emotions, the frantic urge to revert back into my cocoon of self-doubt. But that moment of crisis transformed into another vital lesson. It was during those turbulent times that I truly grasped the importance of resilience. I had to reassess my priorities and confront the fact that self-discovery doesn't end, it evolves. Each challenge forced me to dig deeper within myself, unveiling truths I had yet to confront. One serene afternoon, sitting under the shade of a tree with my journal in hand, I realized a significant aspect of my journey was not just about finding myself. It was about realizing that I am a constant work in progress. Every struggle, every triumph, all shaped me into who I am today, and I embraced that feeling wholeheartedly. As I continue down this path, I urge others to embrace their journeys, with all its ups and downs. When faced with self-doubt, remember that it's a part of the human experience, a sign you're pushing boundaries and striving for something meaningful. So take a moment, sit with your thoughts, ponder your values, and don't shy away from discomfort. It's within these fibers of exploration that we uncover our true selves. I look forward to what lies ahead, knowing that I am not defined by any single choice but rather embraced by the entirety of my experiences. Defining what matters. The first time I sat down to truly consider my personal values, I felt like I had stumbled onto hidden treasure. I was in my late 20s. Caught in the relentless rhythm of expectations, my family's expectations, my friends' societies. I had danced to so many tunes that I'd begun to lose time counting the steps. It felt exhilarating at first, but slowly, the music turned to a hum that drowned out my own voice. I realized I needed to pause and ask myself, what truly matters to me? It was during a routine Sunday morning when I picked up a battered notebook and opened a new page, ready to uncover the essence of my desires. As I wrote, "What do I value?" I felt a flicker of anxiety. My mind raced through countless responses that echoed back society's whims: success, wealth, fitting in. But with every word, a tension stirred in my chest. Were these values mine, or were they borrowed? The distinction was crucial. I decided to turn to an exercise I discovered in a personal development book. I began listing every value I could think of, from honesty to adventure. As I drafted my list, a a curious blend of excitement and intimidation washed over me. This was my life we were talking about. I was untangling and not formed by years of conditioning. One value stood out like a beacon: authenticity. It screamed louder than the others, but as I investigated my feelings deeper, I discovered that it wasn't just authenticity that mattered. I wanted a life aligned with my true self. But how could I distinguish this from the societal norms that often felt suffocating? The answer lay in stories. I began recounting moments in my life where I felt truly alive and fulfilled, savoring a sunset on the coast, teaching kids about nature, wandering through art galleries alone for hours. Each memory illuminated flickers of my core values: creativity, connection, and serenity. These were not just fleeting feelings. They were signposts guiding me toward a clearer understanding of what mattered. In those reflective moments, I realized societal expectations often masquerade as desires. As I picked apart my list of values, an unavoidable question emerged: what happens when the two collide? What if following these core values meant choosing a path that was less traveled, or worse, one that was unapproved by family and friends? My palms grew clammy as I considered the repercussions. Yet, in grappling with this tension, I found clarity. I designed practical exercises to help navigate this murky emotional terrain. Among these was a visualization technique that transported me to a life where I embraced my values fully. As I built this mental landscape, I felt like I was leaning into the wind, a paradoxical feeling of vulnerability and power. The image wasn't perfect, and the path wasn't clear, but the nagging fear of judgment lessened with each heartbeat. I began to entertain the idea: it's okay to choose what resonates with my spirit, even if it causes turbulence in my relationships. This newfound understanding begged another, more urgent question: where do I go from here? This wasn't just exercise, it was a call to action. The conflict stirred in my gut as I entered the next phase of my journey, living out these core values and finding ways to articulate them to others. How do I set boundaries without alienating those I care about? Just as I began to draft my resolutions, the stakes felt elevated. I could lose people, friendships, maybe even family support. The tension built as I stood at the precipice of authenticity. Would I take that leap? Chapter 2: Recognizing the Burden of Stress. Identifying stressors. Life, as we know it, is filled with an intricate web of stressors that can ever so subtly creep into our daily routines and wreak havoc on our well-being. It's like a persistent shadow that follows, waiting for the right moment to pounce. I realized this firsthand in the unforgiving environment of my workplace, where deadlines loomed like dark clouds over my productivity. The constant race against time felt like an unending marathon, and missing even a single checkpoint sent me spiraling into a whirlwind of anxiety. Tasks piled up with the ruthlessness of a tidal wave, pushing my mental stamina to its limits. Yet, work was only part of the picture. At home, a different kind of stress simmered beneath the surface. The seemingly innocuous act of deciding what to cook for dinner morphed into a battlefield of choices, each one laden with unvoiced expectations and fatigue. Relationships, too, added layers of complexity. A simple disagreement with a loved one could ignite a firestorm of emotions, leaving me questioning not just the issue at hand but the very fabric of our connection. Recognizing these varied triggers was the first step towards navigating my emotional landscape. Through this journey of self-discovery, I learned to categorize stressors into tangible forms: the external ticking clocks of deadlines, the internal pressures of perfectionism, and the relational strains of communication misfires. I began to take notes, jotting down moments of discomfort or frustration, which illuminated patterns I wouldn't have otherwise noticed. As I reflected on my experiences, I felt compelled to share what I uncovered, not just to offer insight but to inspire you, dear reader, to also embark on this quest of identification. What are your stressors? What sends you into a spiral? Understanding these triggers is not just about acknowledgement, it's a powerful tool for creating change. Yet the tension of such recognition doesn't come without its battles. The vulnerability that accompanies admitting I struggle with these stressors is daunting. Can I change? Am I capable of flipping the script and reclaiming my peace? I began to feel a flicker of hope amidst the chaos, as if I were standing at the edge of a precipice, contemplating the leap into awareness that could lead to transformation. But what if that new chapter in my life was harder than facing the stress itself? The questions gnawed at me like a persistent itch, keeping me awake at night, as I pondered the implications of this newfound understanding. The impact of stress on life. Stress. A small word that carries a heavy weight. As I sit down to write this chapter, I can't help but reflect on my own experiences with stress. Just the other day, I found myself staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., my mind racing. I had deadlines looming, family expectations to meet, and the perpetual pressure to maintain an image of having it all together. It's a familiar narrative, isn't it? The feeling of being overwhelmed is like a shadow lurking behind every decision I make. But it's not just me. Stress is a universal experience that can shape our lives in profound ways. Research reveals that chronic stress can derail happiness and productivity more effectively than we might care to admit. Physically, it wreaks havoc on our bodies, elevating cortisol levels, contributing to weight gain, and even affecting our heart health. Emotionally, it can act like a fog over our minds, clouding our judgment and diluting our passion for life. I remember a time when I had so much on my plate that I could barely enjoy a sunny day in the park, a stark contrast to the carefree moments of my youth. Instead of soaking in the joy of laughter with friends, I was caught up in a spiral of worry about what I hadn't accomplished. What struck me the most was realizing that stress doesn't just mean feeling overwhelmed, it thrives on the narratives we tell ourselves. A simple task could become monumental in my mind, and suddenly, the day was lost to anxiety. Yet, amidst all of this, I learned something valuable. Addressing stress is an active choice, rooted in understanding its impact on our lives. I began to adopt proactive strategies, like setting boundaries around work, embracing the importance of rest, and even learning to say no. These small shifts not only lightened my load but also transformed my outlook. Instead of feeling like a puppet to stress, I felt more in control. But here's where it gets complicated. Despite knowing how to combat stress, it often sneaks up on me, especially in moments of high pressure. One particularly busy week, I had 2 important presentations lined up, and I felt the tension building in my chest. Each tight breath reminded me of everything that was at stake. The night before the first presentation, I tried to prepare, but instead, I found myself scrolling through my phone, my thoughts racing in 100 different directions. Just when I thought I had a handle on it, panic set in. I felt the weight of expectation crumpling around me. In that moment of vulnerability, I realized the importance of addressing not just the stress itself but also the underlying beliefs fueling it. Conversations with a mentor revealed that stress often disguises itself as a necessity in my life. We mistake busyness for productivity, and in doing so, we allow stress to be our unwelcome companion. The tension began to build toward a boiling point, and I had a choice, to allow it to define me or to take a step back and reclaim my narrative. There's a subtle power in recognizing when we're drowning in stress, and it's in this moment of recognition that true change can begin. As I share these experiences, my hope is to inspire you to take your relationship with stress seriously. The path to enhancing our quality of life involves not just understanding but also action, creating awareness, utilizing tools that foster well-being, and allowing ourselves the grace to step back and breathe. Stress may always be an undercurrent in our lives, but how we respond to it can redefine our happiness and productivity. What's your story? How has stress shaped your life? And more importantly, what steps will you take to change the narrative? Creating a stress relief toolbox. I remember the first time I felt truly overwhelmed. The weight of expectations, deadlines, and responsibilities pressed down on me like a thick fog, making it hard to breathe. In that moment, I realized that I needed a strategy, a toolbox if you will, to navigate the turbulent waters of stress. What I've created over the years isn't just a collection of techniques, it has become my lifeline, a refuge I can turn to when the waves start crashing. As I share this personal toolbox, I hope to inspire you to forge your own path to stress relief, one that resonates deeply with who you are. My toolbox is diverse, reflecting not only my preferences but also the countless ways stress can manifest in our lives. Breathing exercises are one of my favorites, a simple yet powerful practice that reminds me of the breath of life itself. I remember sitting in my small apartment, feeling the tension creep into my shoulders as deadlines loomed. It was then a friend taught me the 4-7-8 technique, inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 7 and exhaling for 8. The first time I tried it, I felt an immediate shift. The breath became my anchor, allowing me to navigate my stress with clarity. Yoga entered my life during a particularly chaotic period, serving as a beautiful counterbalance to my overworked mind. The rhythm of breath and movement flowed seamlessly, guiding me away from anxiety and toward a sense of groundedness. One evening, after an exhausting day, I rolled out my mat and let the stresses of the day sob quietly into the carpet as I transitioned through poses. Utkatasana, or the chair pose, taught me resilience. It challenged my physical endurance but showed me how to lean into discomfort. With every stretch, I learned to release, breathe, and embrace the present moment. But my toolbox isn't solely about movement and breath, it's also filled with creative pursuits that feed my soul. Writing, painting, or even doodling in a journal has proved invaluable in channeling my emotions. I recall one particularly restless night, when I couldn't sleep because of the chaotic thoughts swirling in my head. Instead of tossing and turning, I picked up a paintbrush and splashed color onto a canvas, my hands guiding the flow of emotion rather than my racing mind. The experience was cathartic, expressing feelings I didn't know how to articulate. As I share these tools, I want you to reflect on your own experiences. What activities resonate with you? What brings you relief in moments of stress? Building your own stress relief toolbox is about experimentation and self-discovery. You might find joy in walking in nature, playing an instrument, or even cooking your favorite meal. The key is to incorporate practices that fit seamlessly into your lifestyle, nurturing your mental and emotional well-being. However, creating this toolbox isn't just about incorporating soothing practices, it's also about knowing when to use them. I'll never forget the day I found myself in a high-pressure meeting, my heartbeat drumming loudly in my ears. Instead of succumbing to the storm of anxiety, I took a discreet moment to employ my breathing technique. The relief was instant, as if a weight had lifted off my chest, allowing me to engage more mindfully in the conversation around me. With each practice you explore, ask yourself, how do I feel? Am I calmer, more centered? Does this activity help bring clarity to my chaos? Just like any toolbox, the success lies in knowing when to reach for the right tool. And as we build our personal strategies, we come to realize that no one size fits all. Your toolbox will be uniquely yours, reflective of your journey. Building this toolbox can feel exhilarating, but it can also be daunting. There's an undeniable pressure to manage stress perfectly, to have the right answer that fits every moment. I often found myself thinking, what if I forget to use my breathing exercise when I need it the most? But then I remind myself that this journey toward stress relief is about progress, not perfection. So the real question isn't whether I'll remember to breathe during a crisis, it's about how I've equipped myself throughout my experiences, practicing regularly so that the tools become second nature. And here's where the tension builds. Sometimes, despite my best efforts, I still experience overwhelming moments of stress. It's in these moments that I realize how vital it is to have a robust toolbox ready to go. On one particularly nail-biting day, as an unexpected event unfolded at work that threatened to unravel my week, I panicked momentarily. Yet, recalling my breathing exercises, I stepped away to find my calm amidst the chaos, wondering if I had packed enough tools in my mental suitcase to handle what lay ahead. This brings me back to the importance of continued exploration and adaptation. Just as life throws surprises our way, our toolbox should evolve to meet those challenges. As you embark on this journey, remember that building a stress relief toolbox is a deeply personal and ongoing adventure. Embrace the process, celebrate your discoveries, and take heart in knowing that a lighter, more balanced life is within reach. Are you ready to fill your own toolbox and take the reins when stress knocks at your door? Let's begin this transformative exploration together. Chapter 3: The Balance Equation. Work-life balance explained. When I stumbled into the labyrinth of adulthood, work-life balance was a concept I treated like a myth, something I'd hear about in passing but never truly experienced. I remember the heady days of my early career, where every late night at the office felt like an investment in my future. My phone buzzed incessantly with emails, and I relished the adrenaline of deadlines, convinced that each accomplishment brought me a step closer to success. But amidst the professional hustle, I often lost sight of my own well-being and personal joys. Life has a knack for handing out lessons when you least expect them. It was in the midst of my very own work-life storm, a demanding job, a relationship on the rocks, and friends who had become distant voices in a crowded room, that I began to redefine my understanding of balance. I once thought that finding harmony meant rigid scheduling and sacrificing personal time for work demands. However, as my stress levels climbed and my happiness plummeted, I realized that balance is not a one-size-fits-all model. What works for one person might not even come close for someone else. I started experimenting, setting boundaries that felt right for me. I blocked off time in my calendar dedicated solely to my family, hobbies, and self-care. But it was a trial-and-error process. Some boundaries felt like gentle nudges toward happiness, while others felt like the chains of obligation. I saw how my peers navigated their own balances. Some prioritized their careers relentlessly, while others embraced flexibility, weaving in leisure moments as both respite and fuel. Each had a unique story, illustrating the elusive yet so vital dance of work and life. As I navigated my own path, I learned to embrace imperfection. I came to understand that balance doesn't mean perfection, it means finding a rhythm that lets you breathe. I still falter at times, surrendering to late-night deadlines when the pressure peaks or letting personal time slip during particularly busy weeks. Yet, I'm learning to be kinder to myself, recognizing those moments as part of my own narrative, rather than failures. The notion that we can have it all is a seductive but dangerous simplification. My story is not one of constant balance, but rather one of resilience and re-evaluation. Just when I think I've pinned down a formula for equilibrium, life throws a curveball. It's then that I remind myself that this dance is ongoing, and each misstep is an opportunity for growth. I've come to appreciate that this search for balance isn't a destination, it's an evolving journey that makes my story uniquely mine. As I share this with you, I hope to inspire a shift in how you view your own work-life interactions. Acknowledging the ebb and flow of responsibilities and passions will make the pursuit a tad bit easier. Ask yourself, what truly matters? What fills your cup? Balance is more than just a buzzword, it's a tribute to your individuality and choices. And if you ever find yourself at a crossroads, remember, it's perfectly okay to pause, take stock, and redefine what balance means to you. Just like in dance, sometimes it takes a few stumbles to find your rhythm. So let's journey together, navigating this complex yet rewarding terrain of life, one step at a time. But there are moments when the stakes feel higher, when the weight of my choices threatens to tip me off balance entirely. And those moments make me wonder, am I really doing enough? As I gear up for the chaotic weeks ahead, with projects colliding with family obligations, I can't help but feel the tension building, a reminder that this balance I seek is never truly guaranteed. Can I keep it all together? The question lingers, pulling me tighter into this narrative of uncertainty. My attempts at balancing acts. It was a crisp Thursday morning when I realized that my endless juggling of tasks was starting to emulate a frantic circus performance rather than the polished act I had envisioned. I stood in my kitchen, juggling my coffee mug in one hand while hastily typing an email with the other. At that moment, I felt like a pint-sized clown on a tightrope, trying to maintain my focus on work while the chaos of my personal life teetered below. Over the years, I have had my fair share of misadventures in the quest for work-life balance. Each attempt taught me valuable lessons, often through painful mistakes. There was the time I chose to stay late at the office to finish a project instead of attending my daughter's dance recital. The look in her eyes when I finally arrived home didn't just bring home the weight of my choice, it bore the cost of missed memories. I promised myself I would never make that mistake again, but the balancing act never truly left the stage. As I sifted through my experiences, the first lesson that emerged was the absolute necessity of boundaries. Learning to say no was revolutionary. Initially, it felt like I was shrinking my opportunities, but in reality, I was reclaiming my time. By prioritizing my personal commitments, educational events, family time, or even just a quiet evening to recharge, I began to create space for what truly mattered, my loved ones and my well-being. It was empowering to establish myself as a curator of my life, rather than an errand runner swept up in an ever-growing to-do list. But relinquishing control wasn't easy. I recall a particularly demanding week at work when I was swept up in projects and deadlines. I pushed aside my feelings of anxiety, telling myself it was temporary, but the stress began eating away at my resilience. The repercussions were tangible, late nights turned into restless sleep, and my creativity dimmed like a fading spotlight. It was during one lonely midnight when I penned my most illuminating insight: balance isn't about splitting your time evenly, but rather, investing your energy where it counts. This realization was a game changer. I embraced a more fluid approach to my days. Monday mornings became dedicated to strategic planning, allowing me to prioritize my work tasks while still reserving evenings for family dinners or personal hobbies. I also took up yoga, an unexpected twist in my balancing act that not only helped me physically but also centered my mental space. Yet, just as I began to feel a sense of equilibrium, life threw another curveball. My company downsized, leaving me with increased responsibilities and diminished resources. My heart sank at the prospect of sliding back into the all-too-familiar chaos. As I approached the upcoming project deadline, the pressure mounted. Suddenly, my newfound strategies felt inadequate. Would my attempts at balance shatter under the weight of expectation? In those fraught moments, I turned to my family for support. Their understanding and willingness to adapt was a reminder that balance is not only about self-management but also about communication. Sharing my concerns welcomed their insights, and soon our evenings turned into a group brainstorming session, tackling tasks together instead of apart. This shift in perspective not only alleviated pressure but instilled a newfound resilience in us all. As I approached the final stretch of the project to deliver under intense pressure, I knew I was still a work in progress. But I now understood that striving for balance isn't merely about achieving stern equilibrium, it's about being adaptable, allowing the ebb and flow of life to guide my decisions. The clock ticked inexorably toward my deadline, and with it, a clarity took shape in my mind. Perhaps the key to balancing my life isn't about managing every minute, but fully experiencing each precious moment. Was I ready to embrace this mindset, even if it meant stepping off my tightrope to fall? Only time would tell. Finding your own equation. In my journey through life, much like a mathematical equation, I found that balance often felt elusive. There were days when I was overwhelmed with work, my inbox overflowing, and the clock ticking far too quickly, while my personal life seemed to demand my attention just as fiercely, friends needing to vent, family obligations, and those small yet significant self-care moments I often set aside. I realized then that understanding my unique equation for balance required not just a generic formula, but a deep dive into my own needs and aspirations. To help you find your own equation, let's start with the basics. First, I encourage you to reflect on your current situation. Take a moment to pause and check in with yourself. Consider the areas of your life that feel out of sync. You might ask, what demands the most of my time? Or where do I find joy, and how often do I make space for it? Jot down your thoughts. This isn't merely an exercise in introspection, it's about unearthing the foundational variables in your life that require balance. It's shocking how often we overlook what truly matters to us in the hustle of our daily routines. Next, let's get a bit more specific. I suggest exploring the concept of boundaries, those invisible lines that dictate what we can and cannot tolerate. Ask yourself, what are the non-negotiables in my life? What am I willing to let slide, and what absolutely must remain intact? For me, this was a pivotal moment. I discovered that staying late at work, answering emails during dinner, and succumbing to social obligations left me drained. Establishing boundaries wasn't just a good idea, it was essential to reclaiming my time and energy. Write down your boundaries and remember, they are not meant to confine you, but rather to free you. Now, let's delve deeper into action. Take your reflections and boundaries and translate them into a plan. Construct an equilibrium schedule that honors both your professional commitments and personal happiness. I found it immensely helpful to color-code my calendar, dedicating specific times entirely to work, personal projects, and self-care. It visually represented my priorities and nudged me to protect my personal time fiercely. Experiment with your form of structuring. There is no right way, only the method that resonates with you. Keep a close eye on how you're investing your time. Notice what invigorates you and what drains you. Adjust accordingly. As I embarked on this exploration, I found joy in the smallest achievements. Organizing a weekend hike instead of catching up on emails, or carving out an hour for a book instead of scrolling through endless feeds. Each act of defiance against the demands of life reaffirmed my commitment to my own equation. Yet, as I began to both write and implement this plan, I faced hurdles. There's something particularly daunting about saying no to obligations and yes to one's own needs. It felt like walking an unsteady tightrope, balancing my obligations with my cravings for personal joy. But with every attempt, I grew stronger. Now, as we inch towards the conclusion of our journey together in this chapter, I must remind you that finding your balance is not a one-time quest but a continuous process. Revisiting your equation regularly is essential. Life is dynamic, your needs will shift as must your boundaries. Embrace change, stay flexible, and be compassionate with yourself. Equip yourself with tools, like journaling your feelings or embracing mindfulness practices, to keep your emotional scale in check. Ultimately, you hold the power to craft the perfect equation for your life, a unique blend of work, joy, and fulfillment. As I wrap this up, a gentle reminder, the journey of finding this balance is rife with challenges. You may encounter resistance, not only from others but also from within. Those whispers of guilt for wanting time for yourself or the fear of letting down colleagues will surface. It may feel overwhelming, but remember, every equation requires a bit of trial and error. With time, you'll find the balance that allows you to soar, enabling you to embrace both work and personal happiness. So take a deep breath and embark on this adventure. Your equation awaits, and it's time to discover the beauty of your own unique balance. Chapter 4: Connecting with Purpose. The importance of purpose. As I sat on my porch one crisp autumn afternoon, a gust of wind whisked away the last remnants of summer. With a steaming cup of coffee in hand, I couldn't help but contemplate my journey thus far. At that moment, it struck me how intrinsic a sense of purpose has been in shaping who I am today. It wasn't merely about being busy, it was about being engaged in something that mattered to me. The last few years had led me on a quest to uncover what truly drives happiness and fulfillment, especially in our fast-paced world where so many feel lost. Research indicates that the link between purpose and happiness isn't just a feel-good notion, it's a scientifically backed reality. A study I came across during my exploration highlighted that individuals with a defined purpose reported higher levels of job satisfaction and emotional well-being. It's a simple yet profound truth: purpose fuels motivation. When you wake up each morning knowing that your work or life direction resonates with your core values, it transforms the mundane into the extraordinary. Reflecting on my own experience, there were times I felt adrift, chasing after accolades without ever questioning if they aligned with my true self. Transitioning from a high-stress corporate job to pursuing my passion for writing was not a straightforward path. Yet, each step taken toward discovering my sense of purpose infused my life with enthusiasm and clarity. In those early days of uncertainty, I stumbled upon a simple yet powerful exercise, articulating my values and what brought me joy. Much like a compass, this exercise became a guiding light, steering me toward actions that aligned with my newfound purpose. To advocate for the significance of purpose, I think back to a dear friend, Mark. He was a brilliant analyst in a bustling firm, yet each day felt like an uphill battle for him. After countless discussions, we identified what lit a spark in him: mentoring young people. Once he took the leap to lead extracurricular programs at our local community center, the transformation was evident. His energy surged, and with it, the entire atmosphere around him changed. He was no longer just doing a job, he was fulfilling a calling. This experience reaffirmed what I'd read: purpose doesn't just improve personal satisfaction, it alters the very environment we inhabit. But seeking purpose is not always as straightforward, especially with the chaos that life tends to throw our way. Often, a nagging doubt clouds our judgment. What if I never find it? Or what if I'm too late to change my path? These concerns can be paralyzing. Yet, I encourage readers to view these as invitations for exploration rather than barriers. Purpose isn't a destination, it's a journey. And sometimes, your most profound realizations come from accepting the messy, unpredictable nature of life. Now as I write these words, the sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting warm shades of orange and purple across the sky. This, too, is a reminder that the simplest moments can illuminate our purpose. Whether through work or personal endeavors, the call to seek out what gives our lives depth and direction is a journey we owe to ourselves. And let me assure you, the pursuit of purpose is not a solitary endeavor, it calls to community and connection. So, I invite you to reflect: what fuels your passion? What legacy do you wish to leave? The answers may be closer than you think, waiting just beyond the comfort of your routine, ready to transform your existence from mere survival into a life of richness and meaning. And as the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, there's a stirring within me, a reminder that while the search for purpose can often lead us into uncharted territories, it is also where the greatest treasures lay. But that's just it, isn't it? There lies an undeniable tension between comfort and growth, a contrast that challenges us to step beyond our fears. Just as I slow down to savor the quiet of this evening, I realize that perhaps I, too, am still uncovering my purpose. I urge you, dear reader, to embrace the journey, for within it, you may find not just happiness but the very essence of what it means to thrive. Discovering my own purpose. It always astounded me how often we float through life, seemingly without direction, lulled into complacency by the daily grind. My own journey started in the bustling chaos of city life, where the pulsating heart of my surroundings matched the frenetic rhythm of my thoughts. I was caught in a cycle of work, eat, sleep, repeat, never pausing long enough to reflect on what it was I truly wanted. It wasn't until a chance encounter with an old friend at a coffee shop that began to unravel the tightly wound string of my existence. As we rekindled our camaraderie, he spoke passionately about his newfound love for sustainable farming. I stared into my lukewarm cappuccino, envious of his clarity. How did he know what his purpose was? That night, I returned home brooding over my own sense of discontent. I laid awake, the glow of my phone illuminating my restless thoughts. I scrolled endlessly through social media, marveling at images of individuals who seemed to have their lives mapped out like a richly illustrated guidebook. It struck me then that my life was illustrated with incomplete sketches and scribbled notes. Why hadn't I ever taken the time to examine what I truly valued? I began to critically assess my experiences. Perhaps I had a passion I had ignored. In the following weeks, I experimented with journaling, jotting down what excited me, what I could talk about for hours without fatigue. At the end of it all, I was led to two prominent themes: creativity and community. Life, however, has a knack for throwing curveballs, and just as I was beginning to align my actions with my passions, I faced a setback that rocked me to my core. My job was downsized in a sudden corporate restructure. Panic surged through me, sending my heart racing. I found myself seated in a sea of uncertainty, wondering if I would ever find a path that fit. But deep within that panic grew a flicker of hope, the opportunity to redefine my life on my own terms. I threw myself into learning new skills that aligned with my interests, from graphic design to volunteering at community workshops. Each small victory added layers to my understanding of purpose. It wasn't merely about the end goal, it was also about the journey, about creating meaning in the smallest tasks. As I navigated through this turbulent sea, clarity started to emerge. I began to see patterns in my setbacks and joys, and I realized that understanding my purpose was an evolution rather than a destination. It entrusted me with a growing sense of agency and the resolve to engage deeply with life's complexities. I discovered a love for mentoring, guiding others through their own inquiries into what gives their lives richness and meaning. By sharing what I had been learning, I not only solidified my own understandings but also connected deeply with community members, people who were also seeking purpose in their own lives. This gave me a profound sense of fulfillment. In acknowledging my fears and embracing the unknowns, I learned that purpose isn't a single lightbulb moment but a constellation of experiences, thoughts, and connections that illuminate the path as you walk it. I hope my journey inspires you to appreciate every step, even the missteps. Discovering purpose requires reflection, experimentation, and often, a willingness to take risks. As I stand now at the cusp of my new reality, a reality where creativity flourishes within a supportive community, I urge you to dive into your own journey of self-discovery. The world awaits your contribution, your voice, your purpose. Aligning work with life goals. For many years, I floated through my career like a ship adrift on a vast, dark sea. I had the right job titles, a steady paycheck, and the accolades that came with them, yet something about my professional life felt disjointed from who I was at my core. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy my work, it was just that it didn't resonate with my personal aspirations or values. As I watched others flourish in careers that embodied their passions, I often wondered, how do I bridge that gap between what I do and who I am? The epiphany came during a particularly mundane Monday meeting, when a colleague shared a quote that struck me like lightning: "Work to live, don't live to work." The words echoed in my mind long after the meeting ended, prompting an introspection that revealed a stark realization. I was living for the sake of work, not allowing myself the space to create a fulfilling life. It was time to make a change. I began to evaluate my own career path, identifying which aspects aligned with my personal life goals. Through this process, I made a decision to transition from my corporate role into the world of freelance writing. It wasn't an easy choice, but I envisioned a life infused with creativity and flexibility, elements that had long been missing. As I embarked on this new journey, I learned the importance of self-assessment. I recommend doing the same. Start by asking yourself what truly matters to you. List down your core values, aspirations, and dreams. Then, critically analyze your current job. Does it nurture those values? Is it a stepping stone toward your aspirations? For me, the answers became clear. While my corporate job had stability, it didn't support my passion for storytelling. With newfound clarity, I took concrete steps to align my work with my life goals, setting up a blog, attending writing workshops, and networking within the creative community. Each little victory incrementally shifted my trajectory, filling my sails with purpose and passion. But stepping into the unknown isn't without its perils. As I ventured deeper into freelancing, moments of doubt crept in. Would I succeed? Could I financially sustain myself? What would my family think? These questions loomed large like dark clouds on an otherwise bright horizon. The tension between the comforting chains of my corporate past and the liberating uncertainty of my new path often threatened to paralyze me. Yet, as I wrestled with fear, I discovered the transformative power of alignment. The more I converged my work with my true self, the more motivated I became to overcome these hurdles. Ultimately, aligning your work with your life goals is a continuous journey filled with twists and turns. You may find yourself feeling overwhelmed, questioning choices, and second-guessing your path. But I assure you, amidst that chaos, there lies an incredible opportunity for growth and understanding. So if you feel that dissonance in your own career, take a moment to step back and reflect. Breathe, evaluate, and don't be afraid to pivot. What lies beyond the uncertainty is not just a career change, but the chance to embody your authentic self. And that, above all else, is where true satisfaction awaits. Chapter 5: Cultivating Joy in Work. Finding joy in daily tasks. There was a time when I would greet Monday mornings with a heavy heart, viewing the week ahead as nothing more than a series of reminders for chores and obligations. Breakfast was a race against the clock, laundry an uphill battle, and washing dishes felt like a never-ending Sisyphean task. But slowly, through a shift in perspective and a little practice, I learned to unearth pockets of joy in these daily tasks, transforming my routine into a series of intentional moments that sparked gratitude. My journey began on a particularly chaotic day. I found myself staring at a mountain of dirty dishes in the sink, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of responsibility staring back at me. That day, instead of succumbing to frustration, I paused. With the warm water running, I took a deep breath and looked at the plates. Each one held memories of meals shared, laughter echoing through our dining room. In that moment, I chose to embrace the moment as an act of appreciation, an opportunity to reflect on the connection and nourishment these dishes represented. The simple act of washing them transformed into a practice of gratitude. Finding joy in daily tasks is about reshaping our perception of everyday responsibilities. It begins with mindfulness, taking a moment to be present in whatever we are doing. When I dust the shelves or fold the laundry, I focus on the sensations, the texture of the fabric, the familiar scent of laundry soap. Engaging my senses not only makes the process more enjoyable, but also connects me to the present moment. By shifting my mindset, I started to see these moments as a form of self-care, neither tedious nor burdensome. As I continued this practice, I stumbled upon a helpful framework, the 3 Ps: pause, perceive, and appreciate. The first step is to pause before diving into any task. This brief moment of stillness allows us to reset our minds. Next, we need to perceive our responsibilities through a lens of purpose. What does this task symbolize? And finally, appreciate the small joys, the way the sun casts a beam through the window as you clean, or how satisfying it feels to pluck ripe vegetables from the garden. These adjustments to our approach can turn mundanity into gloriously fulfilling experiences. The tension, however, was in not letting my newfound habits fade amidst life's unpredictability. As I attempted to integrate this joy into my week, family life and tight schedules often threatened to pull me back into old patterns. There were days when I would find myself too exhausted to engage, choosing mindless scrolling over mindful presence. I realized that consistency is key, joy must be an intentional choice, and on those tough days, I needed to cultivate discipline alongside joy. It was about creating a balance between what needed to be done and maintaining that sense of connection. While my home became a sanctuary of mindful tasks, I also invited my family to join in. As we began cooking together, we shared stories and laughter, turning meal prep into an interactive celebration rather than a chore. I discovered that involving others adds a layer of joy I hadn't anticipated. Suddenly, we were nurturing not just our bodies but also our relationships, all while engaging in the everyday. It was truly rewarding to see how our collective efforts turned the mundane into lively moments filled with connection. Yet, challenges still arose, and as the stakes grew higher, tension mounted. Life is messy, and just when I thought I had it all figured out, a storm would sweep through. Unexpected surprises and responsibilities would knock my cherished routine off balance. The pressure to maintain my newfound joy felt like walking a tightrope, with the other side whispering of resignation. Would I find the strength to hold on to this perspective, or would I let the heaviness of burden drag me back to my former self? As I stood in my kitchen, the familiar chaos swirling around me, it became apparent that the real test of finding joy in daily tasks wasn't simply integrating mindfulness. It was sustaining the joy when life got tough. Each dish I washed, each meal I prepared, was now a reminder that joy could be stretched across the fabric of my existence, but only if I held on tightly, continually choosing to embrace the blessings hidden in the midst of routines. Transforming mundane into magical. There's a certain magic hidden within the confines of everyday life, waiting patiently for us to notice it. Like most people, I used to glide through my days, my mind occupied with the ever-looming tasks that came with adulthood. Breakfasts were rushed, each spoonful of oatmeal merely fuel for the day ahead. Commutes felt like an endless tunnel of monotony. But everything changed the day I decided to become an observer in my own life, to sprinkle a bit of mindfulness into the most mundane of moments. One crisp autumn morning, as I sat on my porch with a cup of steaming tea, I gazed at the amber leaves swirling in the wind. In that moment, I found myself captivated by their dance. Instead of my usual impatient glance at the clock, I chose to linger. I took a deep breath, the aroma of the damp earth blending with the scent of my favorite chai. I closed my eyes and listened. The sweet chirping of birds, the rustle of leaves, and the soft whisper of the wind became a symphony. This seemingly simple act of pausing made the morning feel extraordinary, as if I had stepped into a storybook world, painted in vibrant hues of orange and gold. As I began to incorporate mindfulness into more ordinary tasks, I discovered the transformative power of intentionality. Doing the dishes, which had always felt like a chore, became an invitation to notice the bubbles rising in the soapy water, to feel the warmth of the tap, and to watch the sunlight gleaming off the plates as I scrubbed. I engaged all my senses, allowing the sounds and sights to create a sensory playground. Suddenly, I didn't just wash dishes. I entered a magic realm of transformation where each plate was a canvas and every drop of water held a story. One afternoon, I attended a friend's gathering, a setting ripe for the usual small talk and laughter. Yet, as I looked around, I sensed a collective energy boiling beneath the surface, waiting to burst forth. I suggested an unexpected game. We would share a childhood memory tied to an object in the room, anything from a photo frame to a throw pillow. The ambience shifted, eyes lit up with the glow of nostalgia, laughter erupted at the quirks each tale revealed. Moments that could have easily turned into forgettable exchanges morphed into a tapestry of connections and warmth. That night became more than just an ordinary get-together. It was magic woven through shared stories, a reminder of our beautifully imperfect pasts. Through these experiences, I realized the importance of framing our perspectives. It's not merely about creating extraordinary moments, but about polishing the lens through which we view the world. Each day holds the potential for wonder, yet all it takes is a sprinkle of intention and an open heart. As I dived deeper into this practice, I noticed how embracing the ordinary began to fill my life with joy, transforming routines into cherished rituals. But just as magic can enhance our lives, it can also be elusive and quick to fade if we become complacent. Recently, however, I faced a moment that threatened to strip the magic from my life. Just after moving into a new apartment, I nervously awaited the arrival of the moving truck. It was late, and the empty rooms echoed with a deafening silence. Instead of spiraling into frustration, I remembered the tea on my porch. I decided to embrace the stillness, an intentional act of mindfulness. Standing in the center of that barren space, I closed my eyes, breathing deeply as memories of past homes flooded my mind. With every inhale, I welcomed the scent of possibility, and with every exhale, I released the tension of uncertainty. In that moment of solitude, I visualized the life that would flourish within these walls, a warmth enveloping me, filled with laughter and love. Instead of feeling lost, I understood that this empty canvas was my opportunity for creation. But just as I was unraveling this newfound perspective, a loud crash rang through the hallway. Heart racing, I approached the sound, half expecting to find chaos. What was waiting behind that door would test everything I had learned about turning the mundane into the magical. My breath caught as I twisted the doorknob, bracing myself for the unexpected. What lay beyond could either shatter my moment of calm or unleash a wondrous opportunity. Sharing joy with colleagues. Every morning, as I step into the office, I am greeted by a cacophony of greetings, laughter, and the enticing aroma of fresh coffee that wafts through the air. There's something inherently uplifting about starting the day surrounded by colleagues who emit positivity and openness. I fondly recall a particular Wednesday when Jane, our ever-enthusiastic marketing manager, brought in homemade muffins. The office spun into a delightful chaos as we gathered around the break room, the muffins sparking conversation and connection. It wasn't just about the food, it was an invitation to share moments, breaking down our work silos with a simple gesture. These small acts of kindness and joy can be transformative, and they weave a fabric of camaraderie that enhances our overall morale. During my time here, I've come to realize that happiness isn't just a personal pursuit, it can be a collective one too. I remember being part of a project that brought together teams from different departments. We were all racing against deadlines, each of us buried in our tasks, when someone proposed a weekly joy check. It was an informal gathering each Friday where we could share what made us happy that week, be it personal or professional. Initially met with skepticism, the idea soon blossomed. By merely dedicating 30 minutes to celebrate our wins and even laugh over our blunders, we transformed from a group of stressed employees into a community of supporters. As we shared our stories, I noticed an incredible shift. Once the burdens of work were set aside, we found a common ground that strengthened our collaborations. But it wasn't just the laughs and the muffins, it was the ripple effect of joy. When I contributed to fostering this joyful atmosphere, I witnessed firsthand how it enhanced our productivity. This became even clearer during a critical project. A few weeks before the deadline, tensions ran high, and creativity was stifled. Sensing the urgency in the air, I decided to open our discussions with a light-hearted icebreaker game to get everyone laughing. The nervous energy dissipated like mist before the sun, and ideas flowed freely after that. It became evident that joy could unlock creativity and foster collaboration. However, as we basked in this newfound energy, I realized that maintaining this atmosphere required constant effort and intention. As much as joy lifts us, it's essential to confront the clouds when they drift into our sunny skies. Just as we were celebrating our successes, an unexpected challenge emerged that threatened to overshadow our efforts. A sudden shift in project direction left everyone feeling anxious and frustrated. I could feel the atmosphere shift, the joy that we had cultivated at risk of being eroded. Yet, as I gathered the team to discuss the changes, I stressed that this was an opportunity for us to come together, to not let fear stifle our creativity. Drawing from the spirit of our traditions, I encouraged everyone to express not only their concerns but also potential solutions, reinforcing that joy could coexist with challenge. What unfolded was inspiring, a symphony of voices collaborating, tackling the issues together, and turning our collective anxiety into a plan of action. As the day came to a close, I sat back in my chair, feeling gratitude. I understood the power we harnessed when we chose to share joy amidst difficulties. However, this experience was a poignant reminder that while joy can be a powerful adhesive in a workplace, it requires nurturing. Though we faced obstacles, choosing to uplift one another reframed our situation. We stand at a crossroads with each shared moment, a choice to foster joy or succumb to pressure. I looked forward to tomorrow, eager to energize that infectious joy, because I knew in my heart that it could transcend not only our team but also ripple through to every person we encountered. Chapter 6: Establishing Boundaries. Understanding personal boundaries. Personal boundaries are like invisible lines drawn around our mental, emotional, and physical selves. Growing up, I didn't understand how vital they were. I remember the countless times I said yes when I meant no, overcommitting myself to projects at work or social gatherings that drained my energy instead of replenishing it. It wasn't until my late 20s that I realized the toll this was taking on my well-being. The days bled into nights left me reeling, feeling fragmented as I juggled obligations that didn't truly spark joy or purpose in my life. One particularly chaotic week stands out in my memory. I had agreed to lead a well-intentioned but ultimately exhausting work project while also promising to attend a friend's engagement party, all while trying to keep up with my coaching responsibilities for the local soccer team. As the week progressed, I felt the pressure mounting. Each morning, I awoke with a sense of dread, knowing I'd taken on too much and that I would soon be left gasping for breath. It was clear, I had to learn to say no to the things that didn't align with my priorities. Recognizing when to say no is an essential skill that can liberate us from unnecessary obligations. Start by tuning into your feelings. Do you feel a pit in your stomach at the thought of an upcoming event? Or perhaps, a sense of resistance rises in your chest? These are clear signals that it's time to reassess your commitments. It's important to protect your personal space, not only for your mental health but for the strength it adds to your relationships. The more we respect our boundaries, the clearer and more authentic our interactions with others will be. Establishing personal boundaries is not about being selfish or unkind. It's about nurturing and honoring our needs. For me, it became a practice of self-love. I began to articulate my limits more clearly. I drew lines, sometimes hesitant but always firm. "I can't take on another project right now," became my new mantra. I practiced it in front of the mirror, slowly gaining the courage to deploy it in real-life scenarios. My friend, who understood my struggles, would remind me that it's okay to guard your time fiercely. It's a resource you can't get back. Every encounter taught me that each no was a yes to my own priorities, a powerful exchange that shifted my energy from societal obligations to personal desires. However, I also learned that there was tension in this new dynamic. Every time I stood up for my own boundaries, I felt the weight of others' expectations. That fear of disappointing others often crept back in, whispering that I should be more accommodating. But a revelation hit me one evening as I sat alone on my couch, pondering the day's events. The only person truly disappointed by a boundary was often the one who felt entitled to cross it. As I became more authoritative in defining boundaries, the practice also spurred deeper conversations with friends and colleagues. I encouraged openness and understanding, ensuring they knew that my newfound limits did not mean I cared less. Quite the opposite. Establishing boundaries strengthened my relationships by allowing me to show up fully when it mattered, energized and engaged, rather than depleted and resentful. But I also found myself at odds with those who struggled to respect my limits, creating a tension that was palpable. Was I willing to risk losing connections when I set clear expectations? Just when I thought I had it all figured out, a confrontation at work threw me off balance. An unexpected email came in, requesting my assistance on an urgent task, right in the middle of my boundary-protected time for personal development. Memories flooded back, of my old self, caving in under pressure, of the people-pleaser who would have said yes without hesitation. The email sat in my inbox like a ticking clock, and I could feel the tension knotting in my gut. Would I say no and risk a confrontation? Or would I sacrifice my progress for the sake of keeping someone else happy? As I stared at the screen, I felt the push and pull of maintaining my boundary against the potential fallout of saying no. The power of no. It might seem strange to think of two little letters as powerful, but the word no has an extraordinary ability to reshape our lives. For years, I navigated through a maze of expectations, family obligations, workplace demands, and even social pressures that pulled me in directions I never wished to go. It was a dance of compliance. I changed my steps to please everyone else while quietly losing my own rhythm. It wasn't until I stumbled upon the liberation that comes from wielding no as a tool for self-advocacy that my world began to transform. I remember vividly the first time I said no to something that didn't sit right with me. A friend had invited me to a weekend getaway to a party I wasn't interested in, mainly because I had committed to studying for an important exam. In the past, I might have gone, torn between my desire to be a good friend and my need to prioritize my goals. This time, as I took a deep breath, I chose clarity over obligation. "I can't make it," I told her. The moment those words left my mouth, I felt an unfamiliar rush, an exhilarating sense of freedom. It was as if a weight had been lifted, revealing the clear path illuminated by the light of my own values. Learning to say no didn't happen overnight. I had to confront the fear of disappointing others, a fear deeply ingrained in me from childhood. I dissected my motivations. Why did I want to please everyone? What did it cost me? The answers emerged slowly, wrapped in layers of introspection and countless conversations with friends who shared similar struggles. I discovered that saying no requires practice, and with each refusal, I found my voice becoming stronger, more confident. I started to understand that when I declined a request that didn't align with my priorities or values, I was not just advocating for myself, I was also giving others permission to do the same. This simplicity led to powerful shifts in my relationships. As I leaned into honesty, my friends and family began responding with understanding. "I get it," one of my closest friends said after I declined an invitation to a gathering I didn't want to attend. "I appreciate you being upfront." This acknowledgement felt like a revelation. It reinforced my realization that healthy boundaries foster deeper connections. The tension that comes from unmet expectations started to wane, replaced with an atmosphere of authenticity. However, there came a moment that put my renewed commitment to the test, a work opportunity one desperately wanted but that demanded too much of my time. My manager approached me, energized by the prospect of my involvement. It would have been easy to say yes and take on the project, letting my ambition drown out my intuition. Yet, I could feel that small nagging voice inside urging me to reconsider. As the deadline for my decision loomed closer, the internal conflict grew. My values were at stake, battling against the pressure to conform to professional expectations. In that moment, I chose to stand firm, breathing deeply into my resolve. I explained my reasons, articulating clearly how the project would stretch me too thin, potentially sacrificing my well-being and the quality of my existing commitments. As I spoke, I watched my manager's expression shift from surprise to respect. "I appreciate your honesty," she said, a hint of admiration in her voice. "Let's revisit this when you're more available." The release I felt was immense, a culmination of my journey towards self-advocacy. In reclaiming my time and energy, I opened the door for future opportunities that aligned with my values. This chapter of my life taught me that saying no is not just about declining requests. It's about cultivating a self-image rooted in confidence and authenticity. It invites us to respect our own priorities while encouraging those around us to embrace theirs. As I continue to practice the art of no, I invite you to explore this liberating path. When it feels daunting, remember that each firm no creates space for countless yes, to your dreams, your peace, and ultimately, a deeply fulfilling life. Communicating boundaries effectively. When I think about personal boundaries, I often recall a time at work when the line blurred between my responsibilities and the expectations of my boss. I remember feeling overwhelmed, taking on tasks that were falling outside my job description, simply to maintain a semblance of harmony within our team. It seemed harmless at first, the extra hours, the additional assignments. But as weeks turned into months, the pressure built like a dam full of water ready to burst. This experience taught me a valuable lesson about the importance of communicating my limits, and how doing so can transform not just the way we work, but the way we interact with those around us. Setting boundaries doesn't have to be confrontational or filled with guilt. In fact, one of the most effective strategies I've found is to approach the conversation with a spirit of collaboration. A few months ago, I found myself in a similar situation with a friend. She often expected me to drop everything to help her out, and while I'm all for supporting friends, I realized that my own priorities were being sidelined. I took a deep breath and invited her for coffee. As we sat down, I expressed my feelings frankly, saying, I love being there for you, but I also have my own commitments that I need to honor. It was a pivotal moment, where our conversation shifted from a tense negotiation to an understanding of each other's needs. The key takeaway from this experience was the importance of clarity. When I articulated my needs effectively, it paved the way for a more balanced friendship. It's essential to be direct yet kind. I learned to use I statements instead of you statements, which helped diffuse tension. I feel overwhelmed when I'm asked to take on too many things at once, rather than you always ask too much of me. This small shift in language can make a big difference in how the message is received, fostering an environment of mutual respect. In professional settings, the stakes can feel a bit higher, which is where courage comes into play. I remember a meeting where my colleague frequently interrupted and dismissed my ideas. Instead of retreating into silence, I decided to address it. "I appreciate your insights," I said, "but I would like to finish my thought." The room went quiet, an electric tension hanging in the air. To my surprise, my boldness inspired others to express their thoughts too, leading to a richer discussion for everyone involved. This moment was not just about claiming my space, it was a reminder that articulating boundaries encourages others to respect theirs as well. However, there are moments when setting boundaries doesn't go as smoothly. Once, I had to tell a close family member that I couldn't attend every family gathering. They responded with disappointment. A wave of guilt washed over me. But I reminded myself that honoring my boundaries is crucial for my well-being. I followed up a few days later, reiterating my love and support while maintaining my stance. This persistence showed not only my commitment to my own needs, but also set an example that boundaries should be respected. Sometimes it means having uncomfortable conversations, but those are the moments where relationships can grow even stronger. As I reflect on these experiences, I realize that effective boundary communication is an ongoing journey. It requires practice and a willingness to be vulnerable. Every time I push through the discomfort, every time I speak my truth, I'm armed not only with personal conviction but a newfound respect for my own limits. And the beauty of it all? It creates a ripple effect, encouraging others to embrace their own boundaries. So whether in the office or at home, remember, your boundaries are not barriers. They're a roadmap to healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Chapter 7: Time Management Mastery. The Art of Prioritization. For years, I found myself in a constant battle with time. Days would slip through my fingers like sand, leaving me frustrated and exhausted, yet somehow never quite productive enough. I had lofty goals and dreams, but my reality consisted of a jumble of to-do lists and calendar appointments that blurred into a haze. It wasn't until I hit a wall, a perfect storm of deadlines, obligations, and emotional fatigue, that I realized I needed to reassess my priorities. When I gave myself permission to consider what really mattered to me, the jumbled chaos slowly began to transform into a clearer vision for my life. One of the first techniques I discovered was simple but profound: the Eisenhower Matrix. I still remember the moment I stumbled upon it, an enlightening piece from a blog that made my heart race with possibility. It categorizes tasks into 4 quadrants based on urgency and importance. I found myself excitedly drawing it out, realizing how much time I spent on tasks that were urgent but not important, like endless emails or worn-out meetings that drained my energy without adding value. The sheer act of visualizing my commitments pushed me to pause and reassess. Each box would reveal the truths I'd been avoiding. I must allocate my time to what not only mattered but what sparked joy, purpose, and progress. With a renewed sense of direction, I began tackling my daily and weekly agendas with purpose. I started dedicating specific blocks of time to deep work, the kind of focused effort that often fell prey to distractions like social media, or even that seemingly innocent trip to the kitchen. I committed to tackling my most daunting tasks first, the ones that made my heart race and my palms sweat. A technique I learned called time blocking allowed me to assign specific periods for different types of work and personal activities, giving me structured freedom. But even with these systems in place, I found myself fighting old habits, those familiar waves of overwhelm creeping back in. It was in those moments when my well-crafted plans threatened to collapse under the weight of daily life that I had to remind myself of the core essence of prioritization. It's not merely about scheduling, it's about aligning actions with values. Slowly, I began to trust my instincts more. I realized that letting go of things that no longer served me was just as important as adding new tasks to my list. This was a practice in self-compassion, acknowledging that I can't do everything, nor should I try. Saying no felt liberating, almost like shedding a heavy winter coat on a sunny spring day. I learned to cherish time spent with family and friends, the conversations that warmed my soul, and the moments of stillness that peeked through the noise of daily life. But as I moved forward with enthusiasm, life quickly served up its own reminders of chaos, leaving me questioning if I truly grasped the art of prioritization or if my previous habits would come roaring back. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I faced an unexpected challenge that left me frazzled yet determined. My mother called, her voice quivering with worry. My younger sister had fallen ill, and they needed my help immediately. My immediate thought was how this would interrupt my meticulously planned week. But deeper down, I felt a tug of internal conflict. I loved my family fiercely. In that moment of tension, I was reminded of all the lessons learned from my prioritization journey. I knew that flexibility was the cornerstone of management. It allowed the nurturing of relationships, the cultivation of empathy, and the essence of being truly present. As I drove to their house that night, I reflected on how prioritizing meant embracing the messy parts of life, allowing the unexpected to fill the empty spaces. What good are all the systems in the world if we lose our humanity in the process? I stepped into their home, greeted by my sister's tired smile and my mother's relieved embrace. In the end, I understood that while productivity was vital, so was the heartbeat of connection, and I was willing to embrace the unfinished things on my list for the grace of those genuine moments. My time management pitfalls. Time management has always been a double-edged sword for me. I often found myself swinging between the exhilaration of ticking off tasks and the overwhelming stress of too many commitments. One particular late night stands out vividly in my memory. I was hunched over my laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating my face, while the clock counted down the hours I'd promised myself I wouldn't work past. This was the first time I truly recognized my chaotic relationship with time. It was an all-too-familiar scene, papers scattered around my desk, a half-drunk cup of coffee congealing in the corner, and a throbbing feeling in my temples signaling that I'd once again taken on too much. Reflecting on that evening, I realized I was caught in a cycle that many fall prey to, a glorified notion of busyness. I reveled in the productivity that came with meticulously scheduling my every moment, but as deadlines loomed and my commitments piled up, I became a prisoner to my calendar. A choice to please others by saying yes to often led me down the rabbit hole where I traded sleep for more duties. It took a few too many late nights and missed social gatherings to pinpoint the exact nature of my time management pitfalls. The lesson? It's okay to prioritize oneself and set boundaries. A protective shield around my time is not selfish, it's necessary. As I navigated my frenzied schedule, grappling with the demands of career, family, and personal life, I discovered strategies that would ultimately help restore sanity to my time management. For instance, I began utilizing the Pomodoro technique, breaking my work into manageable intervals, which allowed me to maintain focus without burning out. I started keeping a success journal where I reflected on my daily wins, both small and large. By recognizing and celebrating accomplishments, I shifted my mindset from one of fatigue to one of fulfillment. As I share these experiences, I urge anyone reading to embrace the power of no. Remember that overcommitment isn't a badge of honor, it's a recipe for overwhelm. It's essential to reclaim your time and craft a schedule that serves you rather than enslaves you. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Just when I thought I had it all figured out, I received a call from my boss about an important project due in a matter of days. Needless to say, I was thrust back into the chaos. My heart raced as I went over the commitments I had already made. Could I juggle it all? As I struggled to find a solution, I was reminded of an invaluable lesson I had learned through my past pitfalls. It's crucial to assess not just what needs to be done, but also what can wait. It was time for another round of prioritizing. I had to sift through my responsibilities and figure out which ones would serve me best in the long run. With each commitment I let go of, a little bit of clarity returned, and my heart began to slow. Empowerment truly lies in knowing when to step back, and in that moment, I chose to embrace that notion with every fiber of my being. I could face this challenge, and I would do so with wisdom. Strategies for effective time use. Time management has always been a dance for me, a choreography of obligations and aspirations. There was a time, early in my career, when I was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of tasks ahead. I remember sitting at my desk, engulfed in a sea of sticky notes and deadlines, convinced that I would never catch up. That chaos forced me to explore strategies that not only helped me survive but thrive. One of the first lessons I learned was the power of batching tasks. Instead of jumping from one activity to another, I began grouping similar tasks together. Preparing for a presentation, for instance, could blend with evaluating reports. Both required a similar mental space. By focusing solely on these tasks in one dedicated session, I noticed my productivity soared. It's as if I had unlocked a hidden energy source. Another essential strategy that transformed my relationship with time was setting firm deadlines, even for tasks without them. I often used to linger on projects, tweaking and perfecting them endlessly. But one day, I decided to give myself a deadline, not just for the sake of completion, but to enforce accountability on my own terms. I could sense the shift almost immediately. A deadline imposed a structure, an urgency that propelled me beyond my usual tendencies to procrastinate. One memorable instance was when I was wrapping up a significant report. I told my colleague I'd finish it by Friday. Knowing I had someone counting on me forced me into action, and I found myself more focused and driven than ever. But it wasn't just about deadlines, it was also about conscious choices, focusing on high-impact activities. I began to ask myself, what's the one thing I can do today that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? This question became my compass, guiding me away from distractions. It was as if I were standing at a crossroads, and this query illuminated the path I needed to take. Each time I implemented it, my days felt fuller, richer, and incredibly rewarding. Yet, as I continued to refine my time management skills, I encountered an issue that loomed larger than any deadline: my own expectations. As I began to see the results of my newfound efficiency, a creeping sense of pressure emerged. Would I always need to be this productive? The tension grew. Could I sustain this pace without burning out? This inner dialogue highlighted the need for balance. While strategies were essential, so too was self-care. My journey through time management was evolving from mere tasks to nurturing my well-being. As I carved out time for breaks, for reflection, and even for spontaneity, something incredible happened. I became more creative and engaged with my work. Yet, in the back of my mind, a familiar question persisted. Was it truly possible to manage time without sacrificing my peace of mind? With wrestled thoughts, I began to explore integration, harmonizing these strategies into my daily routine without allowing any one aspect to dominate my life. I knew deep inside that the culmination of effective time use was not merely an endless cycle of productivity, it was about flourishing in all areas of life. I could not shake the feeling that this balance, while elusive, was the final destination I sought. But could I really reach it when the world relentlessly pulled at my time? Chapter 8: Building Meaningful Relationships. The role of relationships in happiness. As I sit here reflecting on my life, I can't help but think about the moments that have shaped my understanding of happiness. In every instance, it seems to boil down to the relationships I've nurtured along the way. There was a time when I chased after accolades, thinking that they would fill the void inside me. Yet, with each promotion and achievement, I felt a flicker of joy followed by a deeper sense of emptiness. It dawned on me that the true essence of happiness was never in solitary accomplishments, but in the connections I had forged with others. In my early 20s, I moved to a new city, excited for what lay ahead. It wasn't long before I found myself feeling isolated in my new environment. I missed my close friends and family, the daily coffee dates and spontaneous laughter. During that period of solitude, I discovered how crucial it is to have a support system. The simplest conversations could uplift my spirit more than an entire weekend of festivities. Luckily, I stumbled upon a book club that sparked a deep connection with people who shared not just my literary interests, but also a longing for meaningful connection. And just like that, I was reminded of the power relationships hold in lifting our spirits and bringing joy into our lives. Research backs this up. Studies have consistently shown that strong social connections lead to improved mental well-being. People who nurture their relationships are not only happier, but often healthier as well. It's as if the shared laughter, deep discussions, and even the vulnerability that comes with relationships act as a protective shield against life's stresses. For instance, after losing my father, I was enveloped in love from my friends. They became my lifeline, offering their presence, words of encouragement, and even shared grief. In those moments, I learned that it isn't just about the quantity of friends, but the quality of those relationships that nourishes our souls. Yet, nurturing relationships is an active endeavor. It requires time, effort, and vulnerability. I recall a friend who once felt too shy to reach out for help when she needed it the most. It wasn't until I witnessed her struggle that I emphasized the importance of connecting over isolation. I encouraged her to share her thoughts and feelings, assuring her that true friends are there not just for the fun times but also through the heartaches. Slowly, she began to open up, allowing others into her world. The relief was palpable. Her happiness began to blossom again. It was a vivid reminder that connection fosters resilience. But what happens when we neglect those relationships, especially in times of upheaval? I faced a pivotal moment during a particularly challenging year where my professional and personal lives crumbled simultaneously. Burdened with work stress and home responsibilities, I retreated into myself, pushing friends away. I believed I was protecting them from my troubles, yet I soon understood how misguided I had been. My happiness dimmed noticeably, and with it came a profound sense of loneliness. It's when I finally reached out, unburdening my heart, that I recognized the profound impact of inviting intimacy. The moment I let my friends back in, I forged a path towards healing. In closing, I urge you to reflect on your own life and the relationships you hold dear. Look closely and consider how nurturing these connections can open the door to genuine happiness. Even small gestures, a text message, a phone call, a coffee date, can weave the fabric of connections that support us during life's storms. As I learned through my own experiences, the most profound source of joy stems from the relationships we build and nourish. But beware the insidious nature of life's busyness that can cloud this truth. Prioritize your connections, for they are the keys that unlock the door to lasting happiness. Networking with purpose. Networking isn't just about exchanging business cards or LinkedIn connections. It's about forging genuine relationships that can enrich our professional lives. I learned this lesson during my first job out of college, an entry-level position in a bustling marketing firm. I arrived with a pocket full of enthusiasm and a mind buzzing with ideas, but the moment I stepped into that office, I felt the weight of uncertainty. Surrounded by seasoned professionals, it was easy to think that my voice wouldn't matter. However, it was through connecting with my colleagues that I realized the power of intentional networking. One of my initial challenges was overcoming the fear of initiating conversations. In an effort to step out of my comfort zone, I began attending industry meetups. I remember meeting Mia, a mid-level marketing director who turned out to be not only a great mentor but also a fantastic friend. I approached her with a simple question about her favorite project. Our exchange sparked a meaningful discussion that lasted well beyond that event, leading to invaluable insights into the profession and ultimately sparking my passion for strategic marketing. That single encounter transformed my approach to networking, from seeking mere connections to cultivating authentic relationships. Intentional networking goes beyond superficial exchanges. It's about understanding the purpose behind each connection. I have learned to focus on what I can offer rather than jumping straight into what I can gain. One evening, while attending a charity gala, I met John, a director at a nonprofit organization. Instead of pitching myself, I asked him about the challenges his organization faced and shared ideas on how he could utilize social media to increase their outreach. His eyes lit up, and from that night onward, we collaborated on several initiatives that benefited both his organization and my professional growth. It's in these moments of genuine interest and shared purpose that relationships thrive, and opportunities begin to unfold. As I continued to make these intentional connections, I noticed an unexpected shift in my job satisfaction. The work I was doing felt less like a string of tasks and more like a shared mission with my network. When we meet with purpose, we create a community that supports us through both professional hurdles and personal challenges. I often find myself reflecting on an adage I once heard: "You are the sum of the people you surround yourself with." This realization became a guiding principle in my networking strategy. Yet, not every connection flourishes into a fruitful relationship. I faced my share of setbacks, particularly when I poured time into someone who wasn't willing to invest back. In one instance, I mentored a peer who seemed eager but quickly fell off the radar once they landed a higher position. This experience taught me that not every connection will turn into a partnership, and that's okay. The key lies in finding those relationships where both parties are genuinely invested. Now, as I share these lessons, I find myself at a critical juncture. A major industry conference is just around the corner, and the thought of networking in a sea of strangers fills me with equal parts dread and excitement. I remind myself of my purpose: merge ideas, foster connections, and create opportunities. With each event, the challenge of building genuine relationships becomes more pronounced, and the stakes higher. Will I be able to carry the momentum of my past networking successes into this new realm? As I step into the conference hall, every heartbeat echoes a question: can I transform this opportunity into something lasting? Nurturing professional friendships. In the hustle and bustle of our work lives, it's easy to overlook the importance of friendships at work. Too often I hear colleagues say, "It's just business," as if drawing a line in the sand, when in reality, we all crave connection. I know I do. Some of my most treasured memories come from those casual coffee breaks and impromptu chats that turned into deep conversations about our hopes, dreams, and yes, frustrations regarding deadlines. These moments reminded me that behind every title and task is a human being looking for connection. Nurturing friendships in a professional environment isn't just beneficial, it can completely transform the corporate landscape into a more vibrant and supportive space. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. About a year ago, I started at a new company. To say I was nervous is an understatement. I felt like a fish out of water. However, I soon met Martha, a seasoned employee who took me under her wing. One afternoon during lunch, we sat outside on a bench, our sandwiches in hand, when she opened up about the struggles she faced early in her career. With vulnerability in her voice, she described feeling overwhelmed and isolated, just like I did. At that moment, I understood how supportive colleagues could turn a lonely experience into something more bearable. Our friendship blossomed from that point, and I learned how vital it was to not just be colleagues but allies in an often challenging environment. This connection wasn't simply about camaraderie, it helped both of us thrive professionally. We started collaborating on projects, brainstorming ideas, and even sharing opportunities for growth. Through our friendship, I gained confidence, and my work improved drastically. What we often forget is that when colleagues become friends, they support each other's successes and mitigate each other's stress. This connection fosters a sense of belonging and, in turn, enhances overall well-being, ultimately resulting in higher productivity and job satisfaction. But, of course, nurturing these bonds isn't always straightforward. Balancing professionalism with personal connections can feel daunting, and sometimes we worry about crossing boundaries. The key is to cultivate a culture of openness and mutual support. One day, I proposed a weekly coffee chat initiative to our team. The idea was simple: a relaxed space where everyone could share ideas, challenges, and victories over a cup of coffee. As the weeks went by, I saw walls crumble and collaboration flourish. We shared laughter and let our guards down, creating a safe harbor in our busy work lives. Still, there were moments when I felt the pressure. As much as Martha and I thrived together, the demands of our projects started to pile up. Her deadlines were tightening, and so were mine. The atmosphere shift was palpable. I could sense the strain creeping into our conversations, and I worried about losing the bond we had built. It dawned on me how fragile these friendships could be amidst the chaos of deadlines and expectations. Despite the challenges, I realized we could use this as an opportunity to lean into our friendship even more. What if we could not just navigate work but also support each other through the stress? In those tense moments, it was crucial to communicate. I found myself reaching out to Martha, not just to collaborate but also to share how overwhelmed I was feeling. Surprisingly, rather than pushing our deadlines back, we managed our time better by redistributing tasks and planning our work in a way that reflected our strengths. It became a true partnership, reinforcing the idea that professional friendships aren't just beneficial, they are essential to navigating the tumultuous waters of work life. As I write this, it becomes evident that nurturing professional friendships can radically shift the way we experience work. They provide a support system, a network of allies who understand the pressures we face. These friendships transformed what could have been a stressful slog into a journey filled with growth and connection. Yet, as I sit here reflecting, I wonder, how much more can we do to cultivate these bonds positively? The answer lies in our willingness to be genuine and vulnerable. While there are challenges, the rich rewards of investing in workplace relationships are immeasurable. The tension builds with every approaching deadline, but together, as friends and allies, we are capable of turning that pressure into productivity and triumph. Chapter 9: Embracing Continuous Learning. The Joy of Lifelong Learning. When I think back to the early days of my career, I can still remember the raw thrill of stepping into that first job. The smell of fresh paint in the office, the nervous laughter of my coworkers, and the elusive promise of endless possibilities made me feel like I was on the brink of something extraordinary. Yet, as I settled into my routine, a sinking realization began to creep in. The learning I thought would be perpetual had shifted gears into something mundane. It took a wake-up call for me to recognize how stagnant my growth had become. That wake-up call came in the form of a humble invitation to attend an industry conference. Walking into that conference hall, charged with energy and the hum of conversations, I felt my passion reignite. The speakers, each with their unique stories and insights, crafted a tapestry of knowledge that swept me into a world of ideas I had never considered. I was reminded of the joy of discovery, of being a curious student once again. It was not just the speeches that resonated with me, but the connections I made and the feelings of camaraderie that nurtured my growth. I swapped stories with peers, learned about their journeys, and shared the triumphs and tribulations that colored our professional landscapes. In that bubbling environment, I began to see how vital continuous learning was, not as a checklist of courses to complete, but as a lifestyle, a wheel that could keep turning and advancing my happiness. With that realization came a commitment to develop a mindset of lifelong learning. Upon returning, I dove headfirst into new courses, webinars, and books, reveling in the stimulating challenge of grasping fresh concepts. Each piece of knowledge I acquired became building blocks for my confidence and creativity. A project that once filled me with dread transformed into an opportunity for innovation after I began to explore new methods and tools. My colleagues began to notice the shift in me, and soon I found myself sharing what I learned, forming internal workshops that opened up dialogues across our teams. The endless cycle of learning began to turn more gracefully, amplifying not just my professional skills, but my sense of belonging and purpose at work. As I rushed from one learning opportunity to the next, though, I also learned to be mindful of my limitations. I realized the importance of balance. It is easy to get swept away in the excitement of learning, but I had to remind myself to incorporate reflection into this process. To take it a step further, I adopted the practice of journaling my experiences, thoughts, and takeaways from each endeavor. This reflective practice slowed me down, made me savor my growth, and allowed me to draw connections from one experience to another. It wasn't just the knowledge itself, but the ability to synthesize new ideas with my existing ones that truly propelled my development. But as the joy of lifelong learning enveloped me, it pressed me to face a deeper challenge: the fear of change. As I continued to evolve, I found myself contemplating the purpose of my journey. Was I ready to embrace more responsibility and potential leadership roles? The anxiety of moving out of my comfort zone loomed large, continually asking me whether I was equipped to take on new challenges. With every new skill I acquired, I felt the tension build, like standing atop a tall cliff, debating whether to leap into the unknown waters below. What if I struggled? What if I failed? Yet, the parallel voice of my lifelong learning journey whispered back, reminding me that the essence of growth lies in overcoming such fears. Perhaps the leap into leadership was just another avenue for exploration. Perhaps the adventure was calling. And so, I stand at this precipice, not just fascinated by the flame of curiosity but also questioning, am I willing to jump? Yet, as I craft my story each day, I'm confident that the lessons I've garnered through my journey of continuous learning will illuminate the path ahead. Success isn't just about reaching the destination, it's about embracing the adventure of learning along the way. Will you take that leap with me? My learning experiences at work. Looking back on my journey at work, I often find myself reflecting on the moments that sparked my growth and transformed my professional landscape. One of the first experiences that comes to mind was during a particularly challenging project. I was assigned to lead a team tasked with developing a new product feature, a daunting responsibility for someone relatively fresh in the role. I remember feeling the weight of expectations pressing down, but amidst the apprehension was an exhilarating opportunity. Every meeting was a learning session where I not only honed my leadership skills but discovered the power of collaboration. Listening to my teammates' diverse perspectives not only shaped the project, but also made me realize how much richer our solutions became through collective input. Another significant experience occurred during a quarterly review. As I walked through the results with my manager, I braced myself for feedback, fearful of what might come. Instead of criticism, I received a gift: constructive insights that would transform how I approached challenges. My manager shared her own missteps and how she learned from them, reframing failure as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. In that moment, I understood the importance of vulnerability in the workplace. It's a lesson that has stayed with me, aiding in my development as I now strive to create a safe space for my colleagues to express their uncertainties and share their own learning journeys without fear. However, the lesson that truly tested my resolve came on a Friday afternoon. I was set to present our project to the executive board, a moment I had been preparing for weeks. As I gathered my materials, the email pinged. Our biggest competitive advantage had just announced a similar feature to what we had developed. Panic surged through me. The realization that our work might be overshadowed by competitors felt heavy. But after a moment to collect myself, I pivoted. Instead of focusing on the impending doom, I highlighted our unique strengths and how they aligned with our customers' needs. The experience reinforced a critical lesson about adaptability. Challenges can serve as catalysts for innovation if approached with the right mindset. This was my path toward not just surviving competition, but thriving amidst it. As I recount these moments, I see a clear thread weaving through them. Each learning experience not only molded my skills but deepened my sense of fulfillment at work. I've learned that opportunities for growth often lie hidden in moments of tension and challenge. As I continue to navigate my career, I carry these anecdotes with me, a collection of inspirations that remind me to embrace every learning opportunity. The journey is ongoing, and as I face new challenges, I stand firm in the belief that every experience, whether daunting or enlightening, has the power to shape not just who I am as a professional, but how I contribute to my team and our shared goals. Creating a learning plan. When I first embarked on my journey of self-improvement, I felt a mix of excitement and sheer terror. I remember standing in front of my bookshelf, staring at the dozens of books I wanted to read and the incredible skills I longed to acquire but felt utterly lost on how to start. The idea of crafting a learning plan seemed daunting at first, but it quickly became a beacon of clarity in my chaotic pursuit of knowledge. There was something incredibly empowering about taking a step back and assessing where I was and where I wanted to go. The first step for me was identifying the skills I wanted to develop. I took out a journal and jotted down everything that intrigued me. It wasn't just about professional skills, I included personal interests too. I found that my desire to learn was intertwined with my passions, from digital marketing strategies that would elevate my career to the intricacies of photography that ignited my creative spirit. Each skill represented a different part of me, and realizing that helped me see my potential on a broader spectrum. I recommend persevering through this initial phase because it sets the groundwork, allowing you to prioritize what's truly essential. Next came the goal-setting part, which sounds easy but can be surprisingly complex. I learned to set SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. I remember crafting my first goal: I want to improve my public speaking skills by joining a local Toastmasters club and giving 4 speeches over the next 3 months. It felt daunting, standing in front of an audience, but breaking it down made it seem more manageable. Each speech was a milestone, and with every round of applause, I grew more confident. Reflecting upon these elements, I realized how vital it is to celebrate small wins, weaving motivation into the fabric of my journey. With skills identified and goals set, I transitioned to the final piece of my learning plan: how to integrate learning into my daily routine. I started to block out specific times on my calendar, treating my learning sessions as non-negotiable appointments. Walking into my home office every Saturday morning, armed with a cup of coffee and a handful of notes, became a ritual that I relished. And while the world around me was buzzing with activity, I found solace in honing my craft. It wasn't always easy. Life threw its share of challenges my way. There were weeks when I felt too exhausted, and my motivation waned. But in those moments of weakness, I reminded myself that growth isn't linear, it's an ebb and flow. As I reflect on this journey, I can feel the tension rise at the thought of where I am now versus where I started. Just when I thought I had everything figured out, life threw a curveball. Perhaps it was on one of those still Saturday mornings when I found an unexpected email in my inbox. An invitation to speak at a conference. Suddenly, all those months poring over speeches and rehearsing in front of the mirror flashed before my eyes, and I faced a crossroads. Did I accept the opportunity and risk being vulnerable in front of a larger audience, or did I shy away, remaining comfortably in the background? The tension hung thick in the air as I realized that sometimes, growth means stepping into the unknown, and maybe it was time to do just that. Chapter 10: The Importance of Self-Care. Understanding self-care. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when the realization hit me like a freight train, forcing me to take stock of myself in ways I had long neglected. My workload had been piling up, each task gnawing away at my energy and spirit like a hungry bird pecking at an old carcass. I had brushed aside the signs: irritability, fatigue, and a feeling of being perpetually overwhelmed, convincing myself I could handle it all. Life had turned into a series of obligations, leaving little room for what once brought me joy. But that day, the heaviness became too much to ignore. I found myself questioning how I had arrived at this point of neglecting my own needs. Understanding self-care does not come naturally to many of us. We often equate it with selfishness, believing that tending to our own well-being is a luxury we cannot afford. Yet, as I sat with the sound of rain gently pattering against my window, I confronted the harsh truth: I had been sacrificing my health, both mental and physical, on the altar of productivity. In those silent moments, the pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. I envisioned self-care not as an indulgent treat but as a necessary practice, much like brushing my teeth or hydrating my body. It became crystal clear that the foundational aspects of self-care are crucial for maintaining our overall well-being. I began to delve deeper into the core pillars of self-care: self-awareness, self-compassion, and community connection, all components I had pushed to the side in my hustle, and the importance of which I had reduced to mere buzzwords. Self-awareness was the first step, recognizing the deep inner resounding voice that whispered, or sometimes screamed for attention. I recollected countless instances where I smothered that voice instead of listening and nurturing it. Alongside self-awareness, self-compassion emerged as a vital practice. The kindness we must show ourselves often feels like a foreign concept, especially when we are critiquing every flaw or missed deadline. But it is during our most challenging moments that the need for compassion arises most acutely. I learned to treat myself with the same empathy I would offer a dear friend, learning to pause and breathe when guilt or self-doubt flooded my thoughts. As weeks turned into months, I decided to make self-care an anchor in my daily routine. I introduced simple practices such as quiet reflection, mindful breathing, and even short, nourishing walks outdoors. Every small action felt revolutionary, filling the neglected spaces within me. I gravitated towards friends and family, cultivating a vibrant community that reinforced the understanding that self-care is a collective journey. We all face a propensity to forget our own needs in the noisy whirlwind of existence. But gradually, I recognized these little relationships contributed significantly to my self-care routine. They weren't just social obligations, but nourishing interactions essential for mental health. As I reflect more on those transformative months, I can't help but feel a growing sense of urgency. The tension swells within me when I consider how often we let societal norms dictate our worth, trapped in the cycle of doing more, achieving more, and forgetting who we truly are beneath the layers of expectation. The critical moment is here. I stand at a crossroads, ready to share my journey not just to reassure myself or find solace in my story, but to provoke a thought in you, dear reader. Are you engaging in your own practices of self-care, or is there a voice within you yearning for recognition? The stakes are high, and the path towards understanding and embracing self-care feels more necessary now than ever. I can only hope to inspire you to look inward, unearth your own self-care needs, and find a way to put them at the forefront of your life. Creating a self-care routine. When I first started my journey into self-care, I thought I had a handle on what I needed. A bubble bath here, an occasional yoga session there, and maybe a book or two on the weekend to unwind. But as I dove deeper into the concept, I realized that self-care wasn't just a checklist of activities. It was a tailor-made practice that nourished my unique physical and emotional health. It took experimentation, introspection, and a healthy dose of vulnerability to understand what truly resonated with me. In the beginning, I dabbled in various self-care routines, each offering a glimpse of comfort. I tried meditation, which often left me restless and second-guessing my ability to sit still. A friend recommended journaling. I bought a beautiful notebook, only to leave it untouched on my desk for weeks. On the other hand, I discovered the joys of afternoon walks. Simply strolling under the early spring sun ignited a warmth within me that no bubble bath could replicate. This was when I grasped the importance of tuning into my own needs. I began to appreciate that self-care was not a one-size-fits-all solution, nor was it set in stone. As I continued to explore, I made it a point to observe how different activities made me feel. I would jot down my emotions after each new experience. Some days, I found that painting helped express feelings I couldn't articulate. On others, a heated game of tennis with friends released pent-up energy and boosted my mood tremendously. I even began experimenting with nutrition, learning how different foods affected my energy levels and overall mental clarity. Gradually, I gathered a list of nurturing practices that genuinely uplifted me. However, the quest for a personalized self-care routine wasn't without its challenges. Some days, when work piled up or life threw curveballs, it felt impossible to prioritize myself. I remember one particularly overwhelming week when deadlines loomed, and anxiety crept in. I woke up early, determined to meditate before the chaos began. But instead of peace, I found my thoughts racing. It was in that moment of frustration that an epiphany struck me. Self-care is not just about doing things perfectly, it's about meeting myself where I am. And that bending of perfectionism laid the groundwork for a more flexible and forgiving approach to my routine. Through trial and error, I began to carve out a comprehensive self-care routine that was adaptable and nourishing. I learned to mix and match my activities, coupling a long run with a quiet evening of reading, or a busy day at work with an evening dedicated to creative cooking. Each new experiment added a layer to my understanding of self-care. It became a dance of discovery. I was learning to listen to my body and spirit. The more I engaged in this dance, the more confident I became in trusting my instincts, and that confidence transformed my routine into something sacred. As I reflect on this journey, I realize that the process of crafting a self-care routine involves more than just the activities themselves. It's an ongoing dialogue with ourselves, a constant reassessment of what we need, when we need it, and how we can best nurture our well-being. I invite you to give yourself permission to explore, to embrace discomfort, and to trial and error until you find your rhythm. We may not find all the answers immediately, but as we navigate through our unique selves, there is something beautiful in that journey. Yet now and then, the shadows of doubt creep in. As I pen this chapter, I am reminded of those moments of conflict, the struggle to balance my routine with the demands of life. What if today's chosen self-care became yesterday's chaos? What if I woke up tomorrow, staring at my routine with a sense of disillusionment? These thoughts linger, casting a veil of uncertainty over my meticulously crafted self-care plan. But then I remember why I started this journey in the first place: to reconnect with myself amidst the noise and to cultivate the resilience needed when life gets tough. I remind myself that self-care is not a destination, it is a lifelong journey, one filled with twists, turns, and the beauty of self-discovery. My transformation through self-care. It all started on a dreary Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day where the clouds hang heavy like lead weights. I was sitting at my desk, feeling like a ghost floating through the motions of life: work, eat, sleep, repeat. I had grown accustomed to the ache of discontent that settled in my chest. It was then, in a moment of quiet despair, that I stumbled upon an article about self-care. At the time, self-care felt like a trendy buzzword, superficially draped in images of spa days and bubble baths. But that day, I felt a spark. Something inside me whispered that this could be my turning point. My first step was simple but profound. I decided to prioritize my mornings. I set my alarm an hour earlier, committing to a ritual that would nourish my soul instead of my schedule. While the rest of the world slept, I brewed my favorite tea and curled up with a book that had gathered dust on my shelf. Each page I turned seemed to peel away layers of stress and anxiety. It wasn't just about reading, it was about carving out time for myself. Each morning, I felt my heart beat a little brighter, the heaviness in my chest lightening with every sip of tea. This gentle shift began to transform my mindset. Yet, transformation is rarely a linear path. A month into my newfound commitment, I hit a wall. The pressures of work began to creep back in, reclaiming my mornings and my peace. During a particularly chaotic week, I found myself sitting at my desk, frazzled and exhausted, staring at a mountain of deadlines. Doubt crept in, whispering that maybe I wasn't cut out for this self-care business after all. But instead of letting it consume me, I turned to my journal. I started writing about my feelings. Each stroke of the pen felt like a release, a floodgate opening. It was cathartic, and through writing, I discovered another facet of self-care: emotional expression. As my journey progressed, I began to understand the depth of self-care. It wasn't just about indulging in luxuries, it was about engaging in practices that nourished my mental and emotional health. I enrolled in a local yoga class, something I had always avoided because I feared I wouldn't be good enough. The first session was awkward, my body stiff and unwilling, but I persisted. Each downward dog and warrior pose became a celebration of my body rather than a competition against it. The classes became my sanctuary, a place where I could shed the worries that clung to me. I learned to breathe through the discomfort, and with every exhale, I could leave behind a piece of my stress. As the months rolled on, I started exploring the power of community. I joined a book club, and suddenly, I was surrounded by like-minded souls eager to share and connect. We shared not just stories but also our struggles, aspirations, and the tiny victories of life that often go uncelebrated. There was a profound comfort in realizing I wasn't alone in my journey. Others were walking similar paths of transformation. This sense of belonging ignited a fire within me. I wanted to encourage and uplift others, just as I had been. But just when I felt I had found my groove, I faced a significant setback that would test everything I had learned. An unexpected layoff at work left me reeling. My heart sank as the familiar weight returned. What had I been doing this for, if not for stability? I found myself teetering on the edge of despair once again. My once reliable morning routines felt futile against the tide of uncertainty. I questioned whether my self-care practices could hold me up through this storm. In the depths of my anguish, I turned back to the roots of what had started this journey. Instead of wallowing, I leaned into my community, reaching out to fellow members of the book club for support. I found solace in their words, and as they shared their own stories of loss and resilience, I felt the tightness in my chest begin to release. It was a powerful reminder that self-care isn't merely an individual journey, it thrives in connection. Together, we navigated the tumultuous waters of life, reminding each other that hope and healing come in waves. As I sit here reflecting on this roller coaster of a journey, I realize that self-care was never just about indulgence. It was about creating a life that embraced the messy, beautiful imperfections of being human. It's about awareness, connection, and perhaps most importantly, compassion for ourselves and each other. The tension of uncertainty may still linger, but I've learned to ride the waves. And as I prepare for whatever comes next, I can confidently say that I am ready, not just for the moments of joy, but for the lessons that the storms will bring. Chapter 11: Mindfulness and Presence. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness, to me, has transformed from an abstract concept floating somewhere in the ether of self-help books into a tangible practice that roots me in the present. I still remember the first time I stumbled upon the term during a chaotic week at work. Emails bombarded me relentlessly, and the noise of deadlines felt suffocating. It was in that moment of overwhelm that a simple article caught my eye, introducing mindfulness as a tool to sift through the chaos of daily life. Intrigued yet skeptical, I decided to dive deeper. At its core, mindfulness is about being fully present, acknowledging and accepting our thoughts and feelings without judgment. Easy enough, right? Yet, as I embarked on my journey, I discovered that this practice often contradicted the fast-paced lifestyle I had adopted. I found myself caught in a whirlwind of distractions, my mind flitting from one thought to another like a butterfly in a wildflower meadow. I longed for clarity and emotional resilience, but how could I cultivate it in a world that praised busyness? The early days of my mindfulness practice were clumsy at best. I would sit cross-legged on my living room floor, attempting to focus on my breath. Again and again, my thoughts would stray to my never-ending to-do list. It was frustrating, yet beneath that surface agitation, there lay a hidden gem: awareness. I was beginning to recognize my mental patterns, the way I tethered my self-worth to productivity. Gradually, I learned to lean into the discomfort. Instead of evading distracting thoughts, I welcomed them as they floated by, observing without engaging, like a curious child gazing at clouds. Little did I know how this simple shift would unfurl into a bouquet of benefits that extended far beyond my meditation cushion. As I continued to practice, I began to appreciate mindfulness's subtle influence on my daily interactions. Conversations turned vivid. I could savor the nuances of a friend's laughter instead of only half listening while my mind raced ahead. I found myself responding rather than reacting, which nurtured deeper connections and fostered empathy. My emotional resilience grew, as I learned to pause during challenging moments, creating space between stimulus and response. That leap from reaction to awareness was a life raft in the dark waters of anxiety and stress. Yet, amidst my progress, there came a period when mindfulness seemed to slip through my fingers. Life threw unexpected hurdles my way, including a family crisis that spiraled into chaos. I felt the familiar pressure of overwhelm crash down upon me as waves of worry and despair threatened to pull me under. In those moments of uncertainty, the principles of mindfulness weren't merely helpful, they felt like lifelines. I returned to my breath. All it took was a few deliberate inhales and exhales to anchor myself amidst the storm. I remembered my earlier lessons on acceptance. The world is unpredictable, but I am allowed to feel whatever arises without criticism. Each breath became a reminder that even the toughest days carry the potential for clarity. Now, as I sit here reflecting, I realize that mindfulness is not a panacea to life's messiness. It does not erase pain or uncertainty but offers something far richer, a way to navigate the highs and lows with compassion and grace. As I continue this journey, I strive to infuse mindfulness in all aspects of my life, finding joy in the mundane and clarity amidst the chaos. Join me, if you dare, in exploring how this practice can bring hope and warmth into our otherwise frenetic world, reminding us that even in the deepest shadows, the light of awareness can guide us toward a more meaningful existence. Practicing presence at work. It was a typical Tuesday morning when I first felt the weight of the world pressing down on me. My email inbox was a swirling tempest of unread messages, each ding of a notification pulling my attention in yet another direction. I found myself daydreaming about a peaceful beach somewhere far away while buried beneath a mound of spreadsheets and deadlines. It struck me then, the chaos wasn't just outside, it had seeped into my mind. If I was going to thrive in this environment, I had to find a way to reclaim my presence, to tether myself to the here and now. I remember diving into the world of mindfulness with a bold intention, to create a culture of presence in my workspace. The initial efforts felt like a dance where I stumbled more than I led, but I kept at it, introducing short meditation breaks into our meeting routines. "Let's take 5 minutes," I suggested during a particularly fraught brainstorming session. My colleagues eyed me curiously, but I pressed on, guiding them through simple breathing exercises. The first attempt was met with skepticism, yet as we closed our eyes and inhaled together, I could sense the room's pulse shift. Like a room filled with static suddenly finding a tune, our collective energy settled into a harmonious rhythm. As the days turned into weeks, something remarkable began to take shape. My colleagues, initially hesitant, started to engage more openly in these mindfulness moments. Conversations began to flow with a newfound clarity, and creativity sparked like fireflies in a summer night. We became more aware of the distractions that threatened to scatter our focus. The phones buzzing on our desks and the racing thoughts became characters in our tales, sometimes intrusive, often demanding attention, yet we learned to observe them without judgment. I witnessed the transformation firsthand. A coworker closed his laptop mid-morning, moved to a quieter corner of the office, and returned invigorated after just 10 minutes of silent reflection. It was as if we had unlocked a hidden door to a world of energy and possibility. However, as I became more invested in nurturing this culture, an unsettling trend began to emerge. I noticed gaps growing amidst the productivity. Some of my colleagues began to slip out of the habit, seduced by the lure of multitasking and instant updates. As the narrative of presence gained momentum, I found myself resisting the pull toward distraction, becoming more determined to lead by example. I structured my days meticulously, practicing the art of singular focus, turning off notifications, tackling one task at a time, and encouraging my team to join me. It was during an all-hands meeting that the tension escalated. A team member voiced frustration over the declining show-up and show-out mentality. "Where's the hustle?" he challenged, raising a brow. His words hung heavy in the air, and my heart raced. What had started as a gentle wave of mindfulness was now colliding with the fast-paced culture that surrounded us. The room grew tense as eyes flicked toward me, the proponent of this new way of being. I felt the challenge deepen. I had to defend the path I believed in while validating the need for action and results. This juxtaposition of presence versus productivity drove a wedge between colleagues who craved balance and those caught in the relentless grind. I took a breath, reflecting on my own journey of practicing presence amidst the distractions. Hustle doesn't have to mean chaos, I finally said, my voice steady despite the churning in my gut. Presence isn't a slowdown, it's an acceleration of our best selves. Silence followed, heavy and contemplative. I could feel minds turning, wrestling with this duality. Would they see the value in presence at work, or would the old ways reclaim their focus? The unease settled like a thick fog, and I knew at that moment the next steps in our workplace journey would forge new paths or lead to deeper divides. Mindfulness techniques I love. It's a quiet Saturday morning, the kind that wraps the world in a gentle comfort. I sit on my porch, sipping my favorite cup of chamomile tea while the sun rises, painting the sky with warm hues. In moments like these, I often pause to reflect on the practices that have transformed my life and helped me become more present. One of my all-time favorite techniques is mindfulness meditation. When I first stumbled upon it a few years ago, I was a whirlwind of thoughts, constantly racing from one worry to the next, the chaotic energy of life pulling me this way and that. Just 5 minutes of focused meditation can feel like an eternity, yet it's where I've found clarity and peace. To begin, I simply find a comfortable spot. Sometimes it's the worn-out armchair by the window, and other times, it's a cozy nook in a local park. I close my eyes and take a deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs completely. The first few attempts were anything but serene, thoughts flooded in like a tidal wave. It was almost comical, really. I remember trying to hold onto a single thought, only to have my grocery list, my to-do items, and even long-standing grudges crash the party. But gradually, I learned the beauty of acknowledging those thoughts without judgment. I would visualize them as leaves drifting down a stream, allowing them to float away. This practice has not only centered me but has also deepened my self-awareness. Another technique that has become a staple in my routine is deep breathing exercises. This practice resonates with me because of how profoundly simple it is. In moments of stress, I have a particular exercise I turn to: inhale deeply for 4 counts, hold for 7, then exhale slowly for 8. The rhythm creates a soothing cadence amidst the clamor of life. One day, I found myself in the midst of a tense meeting, my heart racing and my palms slick with sweat. Remembering my breathing technique, I discreetly closed my eyes for just a moment and focused on my breath. As I calibrated my heartbeat to the natural rhythm of my inhalations and exhalations, I felt the tension dissolve. The entire conversation began to shift, as if the world around me was mirroring my newfound calm. This experience illuminated how powerful our breath can be, grounding us even in the stormiest of circumstances. As I share these techniques, I think back to how they've affected my life in ways I never anticipated. Introducing mindfulness into my daily routine has been transformative. It has allowed me to embrace the moment rather than constantly dwell on what's next. Sometimes, I let my thoughts wander, and I'll catch myself planning ahead or stewing over something trivial that happened last week. In those moments, I remind myself, it's okay to acknowledge the past or future, but it's essential to anchor back to the now. It's like reeling in a fish trying to swim away, gentle but firm, welcoming the moment as it is. However, there are days when the weight of life feels heavier. Just last week, I faced a personal challenge that had my mind racing, my heart pounding, and a sense of unease settling deep in my chest. I sat at my desk, surrounded by an avalanche of unending tasks, feeling overwhelmed. But taking a deep breath, my gentle lifeline, I attempted to return to my mindfulness exercises. I realized I was clenching my jaw, my thoughts spiraling into a frantic loop. They began to quiet only after several rounds of those deep breaths from earlier. Slowly but surely, clarity seeped back into my consciousness. And in that moment of stillness, I felt a flicker of hope, even amidst the chaos. As I wrap up this chapter, I invite you to consider what mindfulness means for you. With each breath we take, we find an opportunity to come back to ourselves, to embrace our full existence in this fast-paced world. These techniques have changed my perceptions and my reactions to life's inevitable trials, allowing me to navigate with greater ease. So, as you embark on your own mindfulness journey, remember this: while the path may twist and turn, it ultimately leads us home, back to ourselves. And with every step, the world can finally begin to unfurl, revealing its beauty and wisdom, even in the most unexpected corners. Chapter 12: Joy Beyond Work. Cultivating Hobbies and Passions. There's a certain magic that unfolds when we dedicate time to hobbies and passions, a sense of liberation that seeps into our very being. A few years back, I realized that the relentless grind of work was consuming so much of my time that I hardly knew myself outside of my career. My days were filled with tasks and deadlines, and my evenings melted into TV shows that barely registered in my memory. It was an epiphany sparked by a dusty old guitar leaning against the wall, strings still taut, waiting to be strummed, a reminder of a world waiting beyond spreadsheets and emails. With trepidation, I brushed off the guitar and plucked a few off-key notes. The sound was initially jarring, but as I persisted, I found a rhythm, a flicker of joy igniting within me. That simple act reminded me of how precious it is to have something that shifts our mindset, a little inspiration to break the monotony of daily life. Research suggests that engaging in hobbies not only boosts creativity but can also enhance overall well-being. Studies have shown that those who dedicate time to activities they love experience reduced stress and increased happiness. I remembered this as I reluctantly began to invest time into this hobby, pulling myself away from the allure of scrolling through my phone. As I delved deeper into music, something beautiful happened. I started to reconnect with other parts of myself that had been suffocated by duty. I began to experiment with songwriting, blending my experiences into melodies. Letting my fingers dance across the frets became a therapeutic release, a newfound passion I never expected to encounter. I began to share these songs with friends, and their encouragement pushed me to perform at an open mic night, a feat that filled me with dread but exhilaration, the heartbeat of something alive pulsating in my chest. I urge you to explore your own interests, to seek what sparks joy in your life. Whether it's painting, gardening, creating, or even cooking, it's vital to carve out moments that belong solely to you. I've learned that these pursuits are not just leisure activities, they are lifelines that enhance our existence and expand the way we relate to the world. They remind us that we are not just our jobs, our responsibilities, or even our dreams. We are complex beings capable of wonder. Sometimes, I still catch myself falling back into the routine that once swallowed me whole. But when that happens, I remember that all it takes is one small step back into creativity to feel alive again. Just last week, I found myself holding a paintbrush for the first time in years, splattering colors on a canvas. I felt a rush of inspiration flood through me, compelling me to embrace the messiness of the moment. Each stroke unfolded layers of joy and intimidation, revealing a side of me that had long been dormant. As I sat amidst the chaos of paints and brushes, it occurred to me, passions cultivate not just skill, but a deeper connection to our true selves. This realization leads me to wonder what lies at the heart of your world. Are there dreams you've pushed aside because they seem impractical or burdensome? Trust me when I say that investing time in your passions pays dividends in happiness. But here's the catch: nurturing our hobbies requires courage. It means battling the whispers of self-doubt that tell us we're not good enough, not talented enough. It means taking that first step, no matter how klutzy or awkward it feels. And perhaps that's where the tension lies. For what happens when you set aside the safe, the familiar, for the unknown? My heart races just thinking about that moment before I take the stage at an open mic night, a whirlwind of excitement and apprehension coiling in my gut. Yet, every time I've chosen to confront that fear, I've walked away full of life's vibrancy, rewarded with the knowledge that I dared to step outside my comfort zone. So what will you choose? Today, let's commit to discovering or rediscovering those hobbies that beckon from the shadows. Whether it's strumming a guitar or picking up knitting needles, let's invest this time in ourselves, for I assure you, it's worth it. You never know what treasures might emerge when you give yourself permission to play, to create, to be. Integrating life outside work. It was a sunny Thursday morning when I realized I had been working nonstop for weeks. My calendar was a patchwork of back-to-back meetings and project deadlines. I'd lost track of the days, and the fleeting moments that once filled my life with joy, gardening, painting, the casual catch-up with friends, had become distant memories buried beneath a mountain of obligations. It wasn't just a simple case of burnout, it was a signal. A signal that it was time to integrate life outside of work, to reclaim not just my time but the joy that comes with it. One particular evening, fueled by an unexpected bout of inspiration, I compiled a list of my hobbies and personal goals. I made a pact with myself to incorporate at least a small piece of my life outside of work into my daily routine. That night, I rediscovered my old guitar, the dusty strings crying out for a gentle touch. I strummed a few chords, memories washing over me, friends gathered for impromptu jam sessions, laughter mixed with melodies. That moment sparked a chain reaction. Integrating life outside work wasn't just beneficial, it was essential. Over the next few weeks, I carved out time. My schedule became a vivid palette, each hue representing a different facet of my life. Sunday mornings were reserved for long nature walks, breathing in the crisp air, while Tuesday evenings became sacred for guitar practice. To my surprise, my productivity at work soared. I approached problems with a clarity I hadn't experienced in ages. I was learning that when we enrich our lives outside the confines of our jobs, we fuel our creativity and enhance our capacity to perform. It felt revolutionary, and I wanted to share this realization with everyone around me. However, as I shared my journey with friends, I encountered skepticism. You can't be serious. You're doing that instead of taking on more projects? Doesn't that hold you back? They questioned. Each skeptical look stung a bit, but it also fueled my resolve. I began to understand that this wasn't just about me, this was about changing a narrative that had seeped into our culture. We often equate busyness with success, yet I was beginning to see the power of balance. One evening, after a particularly taxing week, I hosted a dinner party. Friends gathered, drawn by the warm glow of candles and the enticing aroma of homemade lasagna. As we shared stories and laughter, I felt a peculiar sense of fulfillment that my work desk could never provide. The moment crystallized in my mind: life can't be fully measured in deadlines and meetings. It's the people we connect with, the time we spend appreciating life's little joys, that forms the foundation of our existence. As I laid my head down that night, I felt that uneasy tension tugging at my thoughts again. What if this balance slipped away? What if the urgency of work starts to encroach on my newfound commitments? Reluctance bubbled in my stomach, reminding me of the societal expectations that linger like shadows, constantly whispering that there was always more to achieve, more to do. It was a familiar fear, the tug-of-war between ambition and fulfillment. But just as dawn breaks after the darkest night, I took a deep breath, embracing the uncertainty, convinced that I was on the right path. Finding joy in everyday moments. It was a Tuesday, a day seemingly like any other, but I found myself in a moment that would shift my perspective entirely. As I sipped my morning coffee, watching the steam curl up and dissipate into the chill of dawn, I noticed the golden hue of sunlight filtering through the window. Something shifted within me, a gentle nudge encouraging me to recognize that this moment, simple and ordinary as it was, held within it a glimmer of joy. It's easy to overlook these small treasures, yet they're often the very essence of our fulfillment. Every day brings variations of beauty, waiting patiently for us to stop rushing and truly absorb their charms. This urge to find joy in commonplace moments is not just a whimsical pursuit, it's backed by research suggesting that gratitude can profoundly impact our mental well-being. I remember reading a study that revealed how people who practiced counting their blessings experienced higher levels of happiness. Inspired by this, I started carrying a small notebook where I recorded one thing each day that made me smile. It could be the way my neighbor waved on his morning jog, the delicious crunch of a perfectly ripe apple, or even the melodious call of a bird outside my window waking me gently from slumber. These little fragments of joy began to weave a tapestry of gratitude throughout my day-to-day life, illuminating the mundane with unexpected splendor. One particularly brisk afternoon, I connected deeply with nature during my daily walk. The leaves rustling underfoot created a symphony of crunches, and I marveled at how each color of the trees created a canvas filled with autumn's warm embrace. In that moment, engrossed in my surroundings, I recalled the times I hastily brushed past similar scenes, consumed by the urgency of tasks rather than allowing myself this luxury of simply being. It dawned on me then that joy is an active practice, a muscle we strengthen through intention and awareness. Yet, just as I began to relish these moments, a sudden storm approached, dark clouds rolling in ominously across the horizon, threatening to shatter the tranquility I had just embraced. My heart raced. Fear and uncertainty brewed alongside the storm. The threat of a downpour loomed, and I was faced with the dilemma: should I rush home or dance in the rain? I chose the latter. As the first drops fell, I threw my head back and laughed, embracing the unexpected thrill. It reminded me that joy can often be found in the very disruptions of our plans, in the chaos that life flings our way. Chapter 13: Overcoming Challenges. Facing Unforeseen Obstacles. It was a crisp autumn morning when I first encountered what I would later call the undefined moment of my life, a term I coined to encapsulate those unforeseen obstacles that poke their insistent heads into our well-laid plans. I had everything mapped out: my career trajectory, personal goals, and a promising project that had the potential to change my life. Yet, as I stood at the start line, ready to launch, an uninvited challenge came barreling at me like a runaway train. Looking back, I realized the expansive, tangled mess I found myself in was not just an obstacle, it was a lesson waiting to be unraveled. What struck me most was the moment I received the call. It was a routine check-in with my mentor when his voice shifted to one of grave concern. "There's been a breach in the project fund," he said. My blood ran cold, and an icy sweat covered my palms. In that instant, everything spiraled. The perfect plan I had crafted was now teetering on an abyss. I wanted to cling desperately to my vision, my sweet baby project, but unforeseen obstacles don't ask for permission to upend your life. You either adapt or thrash about helplessly. I dug my fingernails into the desk as I took a few deep breaths, trying to recenter myself amidst the chaos. This was a teaching moment, I thought, though at the time it felt more like a slap in the face. I remembered a nugget of wisdom tucked away from a book I had read not too long ago: obstacles are simply the raw material from which we can forge a new way forward. I didn't feel like forging anything. I wanted the smooth path I had envisioned. But in that moment of doubt, I also sensed a flicker of determination. It was time to gather my resources, reach out for help, and reshape my approach. As the days turned into weeks, I sat down with my mentor to break apart the chaos. What emerged was not just a survival plan but a blueprint for resilience. We crafted a pivot strategy that would divert some funds, but could also extend our outreach in ways I had never fathomed. Sure, it felt like standing on shaky ground, but as we brainstormed and reconfigured the possibilities, a thrilling energy cascaded between us. The challenge had transformed from a paralyzing beast into a puzzle to solve, a conundrum I was suddenly eager to crack. But just as I felt the tide turning, another wave hit. The contractors I had relied upon quietly stepped back, unable to support the project anymore. I approached that news like a boxer after a risky punch, reeling yet ready to stand my ground. Trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of the earth slipping out from under you while you desperately juggle multiple pots on the stove. But it's then, in those moments of chaos, that the mind begins to work like magic. What I had initially viewed as defeat was slowly morphing into an impetus for creativity. I reached out to my network, found new collaborators, and infused fresh ideas that honestly made the project better than before. The experience wasn't just a lesson in adaptability, it was a crash course in humility and tenacity. I learned that setbacks don't extinguish passion, they illuminate pathways we never knew existed. It gave me an understanding that every unforeseen obstacle carries with it an opportunity for growth, the kind that doesn't just strengthen your resolve but broadens your vision. The project, once marred by challenges, bloomed into something unexpectedly beautiful. I wrapped myself in the warmth of resilience and left the fear of the undefined behind. As I sit down to write this now, I can't help but think about how the journey didn't end there. Just when I thought I had navigated the worst, life, as it often does, threw yet another curveball. But instead of retreating, I'm ready to face whatever comes with a mix of apprehension and fierce optimism. After all, isn't that where the real magic lies? In our ability to embrace the unknown, to learn, adapt, and carry on, not just as survivors but as thrivers? And believe me, the thrill that's waiting just around the corner? It's worth every unforeseen obstacle we encounter along the way. My resilience journey. Looking back, I can trace the roots of my resilience journey to a particularly tumultuous year in my life. Life has a funny way of testing us, just when we think we've got it all together. It was the winter of 2020. I was in a dead-end job, my relationships felt strained, and the world outside was engulfed in uncertainty. I remember feeling as if I were standing on shifting sands, the ground beneath me constantly eroding. But isn't life, in all its chaos, a relentless teacher? As I sat alone on the couch one evening, scrolling through social media, I was overwhelmed by images of success and happiness splashed across my screen. These curated glimpses into other people's lives only deepened my sense of inadequacy until I stumbled across a post that struck a chord. It spoke about resilience, the ability to bounce back from setbacks, and how we often confuse it with a simple lack of vulnerability. That was the spark I needed, a nudge that propelled me into reflection. In the following days, I began a self-imposed challenge to redefine my perspective. Instead of viewing challenges as roadblocks, I started to see them as opportunities for growth. Very slowly, I began to embrace failures as part of my story. I remember a pivotal moment at work when I attempted to lead a project that ended in disarray. Instead of sulking in failure, I gathered my team and analyzed exactly where we went wrong. We turned our mistakes into a workshop, sharing insights, allowing others to vocalize their experiences, and developing a clear plan to improve. It felt liberating to shift from blame to collective responsibility. As I became more curious about resilience, I delved into research. I learned that it's not about avoiding adversity, but developing the tools to face it head-on. Psychological studies showed that resilience can be cultivated and that it's deeply interconnected with emotional intelligence, optimism, and social connections. I began to put this into practice through mindfulness and journaling, creating a space where I could articulate my fears and desires without reservation. But just as I felt I was gaining my footing, life served up yet another curveball. The pressure ramped up at work, my personal life was becoming increasingly stressful, and suddenly, the very idea of resilience felt daunting. I remember driving home one rainy evening, the wipers barely able to keep up with my thoughts. As I sat at a red light, I was enveloped in a wave of anxiety that felt almost suffocating. How could I preach resilience when I was gasping for air at that moment? Rather than wallowing, I took a deep breath and reminded myself of the importance of vulnerability, a core component of true resilience. I decided to call a friend who I trusted deeply. In our conversation, I shared my fears candidly. To my surprise, instead of offering solutions, she listened. In that moment, I realized that resilience isn't just about how we respond to challenges, it's also about being honest enough to lean on others when we're struggling. Reflecting on my journey, I understood the essence of resilience goes deeper than just bouncing back. It requires an openness to experience, both the highs and the lows. It demands that we cultivate not just strength, but also empathy for ourselves and others. Each setback became less of a defeat and more of a lesson, forging a pathway through the chaos I once feared. And yet, as I write this, I realize that on this journey, the toughest challenges are often just around the corner, waiting to test everything I've learned. Will I be ready? Only time will tell. Turning challenges into opportunities. Every single challenge I've faced has felt like a boulder, heavy and relentless, rolling down a steep mountain, directly aimed at me. I used to stand at the bottom waiting for it to crush me. But somewhere along my journey, I learned to shift my perspective. I realized that each challenge is not just an obstacle, but also a doorway to something greater. The key was not in avoiding the boulders, but learning to dance around them, or better yet, to climb them. Take my move from a cozy little town to the bustling chaos of a big city, for instance. When I first arrived, the noise of traffic was deafening, and I felt utterly lost among the sea of people. It was a challenge that overwhelmed me, but also sparked a fire underneath my feet. Instead of retreating back to my comfort zone, I actively sought out ways to connect with this new environment. I joined local meetups, attended seminars, and eventually took a chance on a small startup. That leap turned into a pivotal opportunity that shaped my career. Yet not all challenges come wrapped in shiny packaging. Sometimes they're disguised as setbacks that leave us feeling hopeless. I remember losing my job during a corporate downsizing. It felt as though the ground had slipped from beneath me. At that moment, I had a choice: to wallow in self-pity or to take a deep breath and reassess my skills. The latter led me down an unexpected path. I enrolled in courses that ignited my passion, allowing me the chance to pivot into freelance work. What I once viewed as a disaster transformed into an opportunity for creative freedom. The truth is, turning challenges into opportunities often requires a shift in mindset and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. It's about asking the right questions. What can I learn from this situation? How can this lead me to new possibilities? It's not always easy, and there are days when it feels like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. But I've learned that within that weight lies the potential for transformation. And just when I thought I had it all figured out, life threw another challenge my way. A loved one's illness forced me to face my vulnerabilities and live through the uncertainty of their health. I was scared, exhausted, and questioning everything. However, amid that turmoil, I discovered a deeper strength within myself. It became an opportunity to connect with others, forming bonds with those who were in similar situations. We shared stories, offered support, and found solace in one another's experiences. Out of that darkness came a shining community that I had never anticipated. But here's the catch: there lies a point in every challenge where one is tempted to give up. It's in that very moment that we have the power to choose, to turn despair into determination. As I stood at the crossroads of doubt and hope, I realized that every time I chose to embrace the challenge, I unearthed a gem of opportunity waiting to be discovered. With each story I share, I aim to inspire others to do the same. The journey of turning challenges into opportunities isn't just a personal triumph. It's a universal truth that we can carry with us. We all face boulders at different moments in our lives, but it's those moments of tension, anxiety, and fear that ignite the shifts necessary for incredible growth. As I sit here reflecting on all that I've navigated, I want you to remember this: within every challenge lies the seed of opportunity, waiting for you to nurture it into something extraordinary. Chapter 14: The Power of Gratitude. The Science Behind Gratitude. Gratitude has always been an abstract concept for me, more like a warm, fuzzy feeling rather than a concrete idea. I grew up hearing phrases like "count your blessings" and "be thankful for what you have," but it wasn't until I stumbled upon some scientific research that I began to see it as something more. The first time I read about gratitude as a psychological phenomenon, it shocked me. Studies revealed that a simple act of acknowledging what I'm thankful for could spark real, measurable changes in my brain and overall well-being. It's one thing to feel grateful, it's another to understand its physiological impact and the role it plays in our daily lives. As I dug deeper, I discovered that gratitude isn't just a feel-good notion. It has been subject to rigorous research in psychology and neuroscience. One of the most compelling studies came from a University of California, Davis, where researchers conducted experiments demonstrating that keeping a gratitude journal can lead to dramatic improvements in mental health. Participants who wrote down what they were thankful for consistently reported higher levels of optimism and vitality than those who merely documented daily hassles. It struck me that the simple act of reflecting on positive experiences could replenish our emotional reserves, essentially acting like a mental vitamin. But there was more. Neurons in our brains are wired to recognize patterns, and the practice of gratitude can strengthen these pathways. The more we train our minds to focus on gratitude, the easier it becomes to revert to that mindset, especially during tough times. I realized this firsthand when I faced a challenging period in my life. My job was precarious, and personal relationships felt strained. I was teetering on the edge of negativity. Instead of spiraling, I made a conscious decision to cultivate gratitude. I began each day not with my worries but by listing 3 things I appreciated, no matter how small. Slowly, I could feel a shift within me. It was as if I had flipped a switch, illuminating shadows that had crept in. My heart felt lighter, and I regained a sense of control amidst chaos. But the really eye-opening part was understanding how gratitude affects our bodies. Gratitude doesn't only elevate our spirits, it also leads to healthier physical states. Research indicated that grateful individuals tend to experience fewer health issues and even sleep better. It makes sense. If I'm not ruminating on negativity, my stress levels drop, and my body can focus on healing rather than battling anxiety. It made me reflect on a pivotal moment last year, when I had a health scare. I was overwhelmed with worry, consumed by what-ifs. Then I remembered my newly developed gratitude practice. I started journaling not just about what I was grateful for, but specifically about my body and its capabilities. I realized then that gratitude isn't a band-aid for pain, it's a powerful medicine in itself. Yet, despite this compelling scientific backdrop, I encountered a roadblock. How would I maintain this practice in the long term? The initial bursts of enthusiasm inevitably dwindled, especially when life threw me curveballs. The tension mounted as I struggled to fit gratitude into an already busy schedule. Would it truly make a difference? Each time I let the routine fade, I felt the clutches of negativity tightening around me again. I began to wonder if this ever-evolving dance with gratitude was worth the effort. And just when I thought I'd exhausted all the possibilities, a serendipitous moment occurred. A simple conversation with a close friend about gratitude and its challenges reignited my determination. They shared how they visualized their blessings like constellations in the night sky, distant at times yet always present. This metaphor changed everything for me. So where does that leave us? If gratitude holds such transformative potential, why does it often feel like a temporary refuge rather than a permanent state of mind? Perhaps the answer lies in understanding that gratitude is not just an isolated moment but a lifelong journey, a muscle that requires consistent exercise. And as I navigate this intricate landscape of gratitude, I realize that the tension I feel isn't a sign to give up. Instead, it's a nudge to embrace the complexity of my experiences, the frustrations alongside the joys, the chaos along with the peace. Perhaps in the end, it truly is about finding beauty in both the ordinary and the extraordinary, even when acknowledging that life can be messy. My gratitude practices. Sometimes, in the rush of daily life, we overlook the little moments that warrant our appreciation. I remember one particularly chaotic morning, my coffee cup teetering precariously on the edge of the kitchen counter as my daughter frantically searched for her missing shoe. It was in those hectic moments that gratitude felt the most distant, like a faint whisper buried beneath a cacophony of demands. Yet, amid the chaos, I discovered that cultivating gratitude didn't require pristine conditions. It thrived on the imperfect and the messy. I began my journey into gratitude practices with a simple exercise. Each night, I would jot down 3 things I was thankful for. The first few days felt forced, as if I was scratching the surface of an endless pond without plumbing its depths. But slowly, I started to notice the shift in my mindset. Instead of resisting the monotony of another long day, I began identifying pockets of joy. A shared laugh with a colleague, the the sunshine filtering through my window, the comforting taste of a home-cooked meal. The list grew longer every evening. Over time, my nightly ritual evolved into a more intentional practice. I crafted gratitude jars, where each family member would contribute notes of appreciation, filling the bowls with our shared triumphs and simple pleasures. The jars became a visual testament to our connection and resilience, reminding us of moments that often slipped through the cracks of our busy lives. Yet, nearing the end of that year, something shifted inside me, a familiar unease creeping in as I reviewed our notes. Were these just fleeting glimmers of gratefulness that would fade like the winter sun, or were they grounding anchors I could cling to in tumultuous times? The answer lay in a time I dared to confront the shadows that gratitude often concealed. One chilly evening, after a long journey back home, I stumbled upon an old letter from a dear friend who had passed away. The handwritten words spurred memories both painful and beautiful, how we navigated heartaches together, the laughter that bound us, and the unspoken gratitude that lingered long after her absence. In that raw moment, I realized that genuine gratitude does not shy away from sorrow. It embraces it, reminding us that every experience, both joyous and heart-wrenching, enriches our lives. This realization turned my gratitude practice into more than mere lists. It became a living document of my emotional landscape. As I continued uncovering layers of gratitude intertwined with life's complexities, I felt a profound shift in my relationships. Friends noticed I engaged more authentically, expressing appreciation not just for the grand gestures, but for the smallest acts of kindness. I started writing letters of thanks, sending notes to everyone who had touched my life in significant ways. The words I penned acted as seeds, sowing deeper connections that flourished in unexpected places. Each letter became an invitation, allowing them to reflect on their own journeys, planting gratitude in them too, a secret shared between hearts. Even so, there was a teetering moment when I questioned whether such practices could genuinely impart lasting change. After sharing my newfound practices with a group of friends, one remarked, "Isn't it easy for gratitude to feel superficial? Like, I say thank you, but does it really mean anything?" The question hung in the air like a daring challenge, and I felt an urgent pull to uncover the undeniable connection between gratitude and our deepest humanity. Could our efforts contribute to something more profound? That night, I began to explore research that showed how gratitude activated pathways in our brains, enhancing emotional regulation and promoting resilience. This ignited my passion to delve deeper, which I now share this with my family and close friends, striving to equip them with tools that could channel their own personal storms into clearer skies. Yet, as I stepped further into the realm of gratitude, I realized the work wasn't finished. Some days felt like slipping back into old habits. It was easy to become distracted, to forget the very practices that had brought me here. I discovered that keeping up momentum required not only the enthusiasm of an ardent practitioner, but also the tenacity to embrace routine, especially on days when it felt like gratitude was a distant echo. On a particularly overwhelming day, enveloped in fear and uncertainty about a brewing storm at work, I stood at my kitchen counter, staring blankly at my gratitude jar. Hadn't it once brought me solace? Hadn't I begun these practices to navigate through hard times? As I rummaged through the notes, each little note became a stepping stone, guiding me from overwhelm to calm. They reminded me to breathe and recognize how far I'd come. How could I let the shadows win now? Building a culture of gratitude. It was a drizzly Tuesday afternoon when I found myself seated at my favorite local cafe, a warm cup of chai cradled in my hands, watching the world pass by. The rhythmic pitter-patter of raindrops against the window seemed to prompt a quiet reflection within me. Gratitude, such a simple notion yet profoundly transformative. I couldn't help but think back to a time when I took everything for granted, including the cozy ambience of this very cafe. Life has a way of reminding us to slow down and appreciate the little things. As I sipped my drink, I recalled a workshop I attended a few years ago about cultivating a gratitude practice in both personal lives and workplaces. The facilitator, a vibrant woman with an infectious energy, had shared compelling research on gratitude's profound impact on mental health and productivity. She explained that gratitude doesn't just benefit the giver, it creates a ripple effect in our communities. Inspired, I vowed to start my journey by expressing gratitude more openly in my life. Over the months that followed, I began small. I started a gratitude journal, jotting down at least 3 things I was thankful for each day. The mundane became magical, like the warm sunlight filtering through my window or the smile of a stranger. I even initiated a gratitude circle at work. Each week, our team would gather to share what we appreciated about each other. The initial awkwardness soon transformed into heartfelt acknowledgments, strengthening our bond and boosting morale. But just as all was moving smoothly, I received news that would test this newfound culture of gratitude. It was a phone call that almost made me drop my chai. My boss informed me that due to unforeseen budget cuts, our entire department was at risk of downsizing. Panic gripped me. How could I maintain this culture of gratitude amidst uncertainty? Would it even matter if our team was dissolved? As I pondered over the next steps, the familiar warmth of gratitude crept in. I realized that despite the looming challenges, I had a choice on how to respond. I could lament the situation or choose to focus on my wonderful experiences and camaraderie with my colleagues. And so the following day, against the backdrop of anxiety, I sent out an email inviting everyone to our usual gratitude circle. To my surprise, they all responded with enthusiasm. In that dimly lit conference room, we shared our fears, yes, but we also shared laughter and gratitude for one another. That single session became a lifeline, a reminder that in the face of adversity, the connection we had built through gratitude stored immense power. As the days turned into weeks, I found that our gratitude practice became a foundation of resilience for our team. The positivity spread like wildfire, inspiring others around us. An employee from another department reached out, hoping to adopt similar practices within her team. Right then and there, I understood that gratitude wasn't just a feel-good concept. It was a lifeblood that fortified relationships in both times of joy and sorrow, shaping a culture that could withstand the test of uncertainty. Chapter 15: Creating a Supportive Environment. The impact of environment on well-being. As I sit on the worn patio of my quaint little home, the sun dips below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over everything it touches. In that moment, I can't help but reflect on how profoundly my environment shapes who I am and how I feel. Often we take for granted the spaces in which we live, the comfort of our homes and the chaos of our cities, blindly believing that our well-being is solely the result of our inner thoughts and feelings. But is it really that simple? I remember the first time I moved to a bustling city. Coming from a small town where the local coffee shop and bookstore were just a stone's throw away, the shift was jarring. The noise, the crowded streets, the incessant honking of cars, it felt suffocating. I often found myself feeling anxious and disoriented. Through this experience, I started to realize that our immediate surroundings have a tangible effect on our emotional health. Research supports this observation, noting that sound pollution, lack of greenery, and overcrowding contribute to stress and anxiety. Environments, after all, are not merely backdrops to our lives, they are vital players in our emotional narratives. Take a moment to think about the spaces you frequent. The stark contrast of a concrete jungle versus a lush forest is not merely aesthetic. Nature has a restorative quality that many studies have confirmed. I recall a time when I spent a weekend in the mountains, disconnecting from city life. As I stepped out of the car and inhaled the crisp pine-scented air, I felt an immediate weight lift off my shoulders. My worries seemed small against the backdrop of towering trees and expansive skies. Nature's tranquility acted as a balm for my frayed nerves, and I returned home with renewed energy and clarity. To balance the frenetic pace of modern living, I now make it a point to regularly immerse myself in nature, even if it's just a walk in the park. Despite my appreciation for natural beauty, I also recognize the complexities of urban life. Community plays a crucial role in our well-being. After all, humans are social creatures. In my apartment building, I attempted to cultivate relationships with my neighbors. Over time, we transformed our shared space into a flourishing community garden. It served not only as a visual delight but as an oasis where friendships blossomed, proving that environment isn't just about physical space, it's about the connections we forge within it. The garden became a symbol of collaboration and resilience, allowing us to focus on communal efforts rather than individual struggles. Yet, as I ponder over these life lessons, I can't shake the feeling that not all environments lead to flourishing. A sense of safety is vital, and the reality is that many still live in places tainted by violence or neglect. It's heartbreaking to think of the people trapped in cycles of despair, where their environment stifles potential instead of nurturing it. While I cultivate my garden of relationships and experiences, there are voices that echo a louder reality, voices that need to be heard. Our environments must evolve, be it safe living conditions or accessible green spaces, so that everyone can attain well-being. In my quest for understanding, I've learned that we can be agents of change, not just for ourselves but for the world we inhabit. Each decision we make, whether it's advocating for park spaces or supporting local initiatives, has a ripple effect. As I sit contemplating these ideas one evening, I realize the urgency of sharing this knowledge, not to preach, but to empower others to make intentional choices about their environments. It's within our reach to redefine our surroundings and foster communities that prioritize well-being. We all have a story shaped by our environments, but the thrilling question remains: how can we transform those stories into something extraordinary? As the night deepens around me, I can't help but feel that the answer lies just beyond my front door, waiting for me to take the next step. My ideal work environment. When I think about my ideal work environment, the first image that comes to mind is a spacious, sunlit room filled with the warm glow of natural light. Picture this: large windows that reach from floor to ceiling, offering a panoramic view of vibrant greenery outside, with birds flitting joyfully among the branches. This is not just a dream, it's a sanctuary, a place designed to inspire creativity and foster productivity. I can almost feel the energy pulsating through the air, inviting ideas to flow freely. There's a gentle breeze wafting through, carrying with it a subtle hint of jasmine from the garden below. As I settle at my desk, a sturdy yet minimalist piece made of reclaimed wood, I notice how organized my workspace is. Everything has a purpose. My laptop sits perfectly aligned, and beside it, neatly arranged notebooks filled with thoughts and sketches come alive on the pages. A few personal items, a quirky mug from my travels, a plant that thrives on neglect, remind me of my journey while keeping me grounded in the present. Some might argue that chaos fuels creativity, and while there is merit to that, I find that a well-structured space beckons clarity of thought. It helps me dive deeper into my work without the distractions of clutter pulling me away. But it's not just about the aesthetics, it's the vibes too. The soft hum of ambient music plays in the background, meticulously curated to keep my mind in a productive state without becoming too distracting. There's an openness in the layout, a collaborative spirit, where conversations can bloom seamlessly. My ideal work environment encourages brainstorming sessions, spontaneous discussions that ignite new ideas, and the camaraderie that comes from sharing challenges and triumphs together. Imagine brainstorming on a whiteboard, ideas dancing on the surface as we toss thoughts back and forth, the air crackling with energy and possibility. As the day goes on, the atmosphere shifts with the setting sun. The warm glow that spills through the windows is matched only by the warmth of the people I share this space with. My colleagues are not just co-workers, they are friends, each bringing a unique perspective that fuels our collective growth. We believe in flexibility, understanding that productivity doesn't always adhere to the 9-to-5 grind. There's space for breaks, for quiet contemplation, and for a burst of laughter to relieve stress. It's a rhythm that feels natural, nurtured by trust and respect. However, amidst this idyllic setting, a wave of unease washes over me as I recall the nature of work today. The push for ever-increasing productivity often overshadows the joys of the workplace. Productivity tools and endless notifications drown the essence of creativity, turning our beloved sanctuary into a battleground of distractions. The vision of my perfect work environment flickers like a candle in a drafty room. Will my ideal space last, or will it succumb to the pressures of a world that refuses to slow down? As I ponder this, I realize creating the perfect work environment goes beyond physical elements. It requires a mindset shift. It's about setting boundaries, protecting our creative energy, and fostering an atmosphere of empowerment. In these moments of reflection, I give myself permission to envision this utopia, with renewed determination to make it a reality, not just for me, but for everyone who too seeks that perfect blend of inspiration and productivity. The question lingers: will my aspirations for an ideal work environment be enough to combat the chaos, or will it be an uphill battle against an ever-evolving landscape of work? Fostering support in the workplace. When I first stepped into the corporate world, I was greeted with an overwhelming sense of excitement mixed with trepidation. I wasn't just entering my first job, I was entering a social ecosystem where the dynamics were intricate, and the stakes felt high. I quickly realized that the foundation of a successful career didn't solely rely on individual talent or hard work. It was also about the support I could foster within my workplace, and how I could encourage others to do the same. One particular incident sticks out in my memory. During a pivotal project, my colleague Sarah appeared to be struggling. Her usual spark seemed dampened, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that she needed a nudge, perhaps even a support system. I approached her not with solutions but with an open ear. We chatted over coffee, and she unburdened her frustrations. If someone had told me back then that the simple act of listening could create such an immediate bond, I would have been skeptical, but I listened anyway. What started as a casual conversation turned into an empowering experience, not just for Sarah but for myself. I learned that sometimes we only need to feel seen and heard. It was a lesson that would resonate through my career. To create a nurturing workplace culture, it's crucial to prioritize open communication. I often reflect on the conversations I've had and realize how vital it was to maintain an environment where employees felt comfortable sharing their thoughts and vulnerabilities. This isn't just a nice-to-have, it's backed by research showing that workplaces with open communication experience greater employee satisfaction, leading to improved productivity. However, fostering this kind of atmosphere often requires conscious effort, especially in larger organizations where silos can stifle communication. Another key component in fostering support is collaboration. I recall organizing a team brainstorming session that shifted everything. At first, there was hesitance among the team members, each seemingly stuck in their own world, worrying more about their individual contributions than the collective ideas we could create. With some encouragement and the right structure, ideas flowed. We built upon each other's thoughts, and even those who were usually quiet began to find their voices. Collaboration fosters a collective sense of ownership and can yield not only better solutions but also invigorated spirits among team members. But what happens when fostering support feels like a Herculean task? There are days when the challenges seem insurmountable. Team conflicts arise, deadlines loom, and motivation dips. Just last month, our team faced a significant setback that left us all reeling. Tensions grew palpable, and the thought of support seemed like a distant memory. Then one evening, I found myself in a huddle with my team, grappling with a mix of anxiety and hopelessness. That's when I remembered the core principle I had learned: it's often during our toughest moments that support is most essential. I initiated a candid discussion where everyone shared not just their frustrations but also ideas to move forward. To my surprise, vulnerability transformed into resilience. We left that meeting with a newfound sense of connection and a collaborative spirit. Building a culture of support greatly enhances morale, but it can feel treacherous if not navigated thoughtfully. Just when I believed we were on the right path, an unexpected challenge emerged. Not within the team dynamics, but from a sudden organizational restructuring that left many feeling uncertain and insecure. Just as I had managed to cultivate an environment of openness, the fear of change threatened to unravel it. The tension was thick as people turned to me for guidance. Would the support I had so diligently built hold up under pressure, or would uncertainty reign over our shared commitment? I had to find my footing and reaffirm that fostering support, in times of triumph and turmoil, was not just a fleeting initiative, but a steadfast covenant we would uphold together. Chapter 16: Celebrating Small Wins. Understanding the importance of celebration. It often hit me during those quiet moments, perhaps while brewing my morning coffee or watching the evening sun dip below the horizon, that in the hustle of everyday life, we often overlook the simple yet profound power of celebration. We live in a world that is perpetually rushing toward the next deadline, the next task, and the next big project. Yet, it's the small moments of joy, the milestones large and small, that deserve our attention. Reflecting on my own experiences, I realized that it wasn't just about throwing parties or marking anniversaries. It was about embracing life itself, pausing to recognize achievements, both personal and communal. The significance of celebration became crystal clear to me during my best friend's wedding. The atmosphere was lively, filled with laughter and the delightful scent of blooming flowers. Each shared story, each clink of glasses, and each heartfelt toast created an invisible thread binding us together in that moment of happiness. I noticed how people who, just hours before, were strangers, became a tapestry of memories woven into the fabric of that special day. This was not just a wedding, it was a moment where we acknowledged love, commitment, and the journey that brought us to that point. It was then that I started to understand, celebrations are not merely events, they are crucial markers that enrich our lives, nourishing our souls with a sense of belonging and appreciation. There's also scientific backing to the significance of celebration. Research shows that celebrating success, whether it be in a personal achievement or in a team project, releases dopamine, the feel-good hormone. It fosters a sense of accomplishment, motivating us to pursue future goals with renewed vigor. When I landed my first major writing contract, it felt surreal. My initial instinct was to run off into the sunset, basking in my own triumph. But when I took the time to gather my closest friends and share that achievement, to laugh over pizza and reminisce about the late nights spent in front of the computer, I realized that the joy multiplied. Celebration deepens our connections and transforms our moments of triumph into lasting memories. It creates a reservoir of joy we can draw from during the more challenging times. As I delve further into the importance of celebration, I can't help but think of how these practices apply to various life milestones. Birthdays are an obvious example, but think beyond that. What about celebrating the completion of a tough project at work or the end of a difficult season in life? There's immense power in recognizing those moments, yet so often, they pass without fanfare. My aunt, after finishing her chemotherapy treatment, decided to throw a new beginnings party. It was not just a celebration of overcoming, but a mark of resilience. The stories shared that day reminded us all of our own battles and victories. It was a cathartic celebration that underscored our shared humanity, making us all acknowledge how connected we truly are. But what happens when we don't take the time to celebrate? Recently, I attended a conference where the focus was heavily on productivity and the next big thing. It felt suffocating. There was no mention of achievements or reflections on what had already been accomplished. Leaving that event, I felt an inexplicable emptiness, a sense that we had buried the emotional core of our endeavors beneath an avalanche of expectations. It was then I realized that without celebration, we risk losing the joy embedded in our pursuits, reduced to mere checkboxes on a never-ending to-do list. This brings me to a crucial question: how do we build celebration into our lives without it feeling forced or unrealistic? Embracing the art of celebration can begin small. Start by acknowledging your daily victories, no matter how trivial they may seem, from completing a challenging task at work to finally making that healthy dinner. Create rituals that mark the end of a week or the good news that unexpectedly arrives. Understand that every milestone, every hurdle, deserves a moment of recognition. Try a dedicated celebration night with friends or family, where the sole focus is to share wins, both big and small. Make it a point to celebrate your failures too, they are stepping stones toward success. The act of showing gratitude fosters resilience and, in turn, strengthens the fabric of our relationships. As I pen down these thoughts, I can't help but feel a mixture of warmth and anticipation building up inside me. Perhaps, the true essence of celebration rests in its potential for transformation. Every time we come together to celebrate, we weave a new layer into the story of our lives, enhancing what it means to be human, to dream, to achieve, and ultimately to connect. Each celebration carries the promise of renewal, of hope. So, as we move forward, let's not forget to pause, reflect, and rejoice. We owe it to ourselves to celebrate our journey, for it is in these moments that we truly find the heart of what it means to live. My rituals for celebrating achievements. There's something uniquely gratifying about marking a personal achievement. As a child, I reveled in the simple joy of earning a gold star on a report card or being recognized for my contributions in school plays. Yet, somewhere between those innocent days and the fast-paced realm of adulthood, I found that the thrill of achievement often takes a back seat to the following checklist of what's next. However, over the years, I've cultivated rituals to honor my milestones, both big and small, that restore that sense of pride and satisfaction in my life. My first ritual is the achievement journal. Whenever I reach a goal, be it completing a major project at work or simply maintaining my morning routine for a week, I take a moment to sit down with this journal. In it, I write not just about what I achieved, but how I felt throughout the journey. What obstacles did I overcome? What did I learn? Revisiting these reflections reminds me that every step, no matter how trivial it may seem, contributes to my personal growth. The act of writing down these moments is like planting seeds of confidence that I can look back on when self-doubt creeps in. Another beloved ritual involves food. I firmly believe that sharing a meal can transform a moment of achievement into a cherished memory. After completing a significant goal, I often treat myself to a meal at my favorite restaurant or host a small gathering with friends and family. It's not about the grandeur of the celebration, rather, it's about connection. I want the people I care about to share in my joy, to help me savor the moment. Together, we laugh, reminisce about the journey, and toast to future victories. But there are moments when even my most treasured rituals feel lacking. Recently, after a particularly challenging project, I craved something deeper, something that would resonate more profoundly within me. Instead of my usual dinner celebration, I decided to go on a solitary retreat to the mountains. There, amidst towering pines and the rustle of leaves, I dedicated time to meditate on my journey. Sitting by a tranquil stream, I found myself immersed not just in nature but in gratitude. That stillness allowed me to reflect on my ups and downs, acknowledging the discomfort that often accompanies growth. As I soaked in the beauty around me, however, a tension began to build. I had recently set my sights on a lofty goal that seemed just beyond my reach. Doubts started to creep in. Was I really capable enough to achieve what I envisioned? Would I ultimately let myself down if I strove too high? In those moments of clarity, wrapped in the embrace of nature, I realized the importance of recognizing and celebrating not just the successful milestones but also the courage it takes to step outside my comfort zone. The unraveling doubts became part of my achievement narrative, deserving to be honored just as much as the finished product. I returned home filled with renewed purpose. While I had planned a small celebration with my friends to share my journey, I also resolved to add a new layer to my rituals. The next time I faced a daunting aspiration, I wouldn't want to only celebrate success, I would acknowledge the struggle, the fear, the effort. This realization brought a rush of excitement. I envisioned a ritual that would involve sharing my fears and challenges during these celebrations, fostering deeper connections and empathy. And so, with every achievement I celebrate moving forward, I will invite my loved ones into this honest dialogue, one that embraces the full spectrum of what it means to pursue our dreams. It is in this shared space of vulnerability and joy that I find clarity and strengthen my resolve for the next journey ahead. Celebrating achievements, I've realized, is not merely about the milestones themselves. It's about the people we share them with and the courageous steps we take toward our aspirations. By honoring all facets of the experience, I am building a life filled with intention, empathy, and a community that uplifts me. And that, I believe, is worth celebrating as much as any achievement. Creating a win-recognizing culture. It's the small wins that often go unnoticed but can create seismic shifts in team morale and productivity. I remember the first time I consciously recognized a colleague's effort in a project. It was during a particularly grueling week, and the air in our open office felt heavy with deadlines and stress. I had just noticed Lisa, one of our project coordinators, going above and beyond to keep us organized. Instead of just appreciating her in passing, I decided to send out an email to our entire team acknowledging her contributions. The response was immediate and heartfelt. Suddenly, her hard work was a topic of conversation over lunch, and it sparked a flurry of similar acknowledgments for others. That moment was sanctified by the spark of recognition, illuminating the room with a cheers-like effect. The truth is, we often miss the chance to highlight accomplishments because we're caught up in a cycle of focusing solely on the end goals. There's a mantra I've always believed in: celebrate the process as much as the product. With every small win we recognize, we not only boost individual morale but also cultivate a supportive culture. If we prioritize recognition, we exploit the power of positive reinforcement. Psychologists have studied this extensively. When people feel seen and appreciated for their efforts, they're far more engaged and productive. It's like adding fuel to a fire. What might have once felt like an exhausting effort transforms into an enthusiastic endeavor. As I've walked through various workplaces, from the bustling cacophony of a tech startup to the quieter, more reserved environment of a law firm, I've seen how the culture of recognition varies. In some places, it's almost as if the wins are buried under paperwork and formalities, overshadowed by the looming demands of the next big deadline. In others, it sparkles brightly, as if every individual's contribution counts in a rich tapestry of collaboration. I once worked with a technology company that made it a weekly ritual to set aside time during team meetings for shout-outs. It was genuine and spontaneous, with teammates nominating one another for their hard work and creativity. I recall the palpable joy when one of the junior developers, skeptical at first, received an award for her innovative solution to a coding glitch. She beamed with pride. That singular moment of recognition opened the floodgates for her to share more creative ideas moving forward. But creating a win-recognizing culture doesn't happen overnight. It takes intentionality. It requires a shift in mindset, where recognizing accomplishments, big and small, becomes a part of the organizational DNA. The stakes are high too. A lack of recognition in the workplace can lead to disengagement, lowering productivity and increasing turnover rates. I often think about the organizations I admired that thrived on recognition. They fostered open communication channels, utilized feedback loops, and implemented peer recognition platforms. These practices weren't just programs, they were genuine efforts emerging from a deeper understanding that our humanity thrives on connection, on feeling valued. Yet, in the heart of all these discussions lies a deeper transformation awaiting to unfold, a challenge to confront. What if our colleagues don't fully resonate with the concept of recognition? What if some individuals prefer their work to speak for itself? When I faced this conundrum in my team, it was a turning point. I had to adjust my approach and nurture a culture where every voice and preference were honored. I reached out for anonymous feedback and discovered individuals who longed for recognition but felt nervous about being singled out. It was an epiphany, realizing that recognition could be tailored. It's about the preferences of the ones you aim to uplift. Chapter 17: Finding Freedom in Flexibility. The Benefits of Flexible Work. It was a rainy Tuesday morning when I first truly understood the magic of flexible work. I had just experienced the chaos of a morning commute, cars honking, umbrellas flipping inside out, and people scrambling to dodge puddles like they were minefields. By the time I reached my desk, I was drenched in that familiar cocktail of stress and caffeine. But that day, my boss had made a bold move. We could choose to work from home when the weather was bad. I decided to take a leap of faith and work from my cozy living room instead of the dreary office. As I settled into my favorite chair, coffee in hand, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. This simple change transformed my productivity levels, allowing me to focus in a way the office never could. I realized that the flexibility of working remotely benefited not just my mental clarity but also my efficiency. There I was, in my pajama bottoms, managing meetings, brainstorming ideas, and feeling more connected to my work than ever before. This experience was a profound reminder of why flexible work is increasingly becoming a lifeline for many of us navigating the complexities of life today. Fast forward a few weeks, and I had officially adopted a more flexible routine. My mornings became a marvel of organization. I'd exercise when I wanted, start work when I felt sharpest, and break away for lunch when hunger struck. This personalized rhythm didn't just lead to happier mornings, it extended my ability to engage energetically with my responsibilities. My colleagues, initially skeptical, started noticing a shift in my demeanor. I wasn't just getting things done, I was thriving. And the conversations that ensued at the virtual water cooler hinted that I wasn't alone in this newfound freedom. However, with flexibility came challenges. I remember one afternoon, as I was piecing together a presentation, my phone buzzed insistently. It was my son, who had just returned from school, looking for someone to play with. The dilemma was palpable. The struggle between my responsibilities and my role as a parent clawed at me. How could I balance the needs of my work with the joy of watching my son grow? This tension exposed the reality of flexible work, not just the sunny benefits but also the tough realities we often navigate. It was a critical catalyst for introspection and dialogue with my family. We established boundaries that worked for everyone, incorporating spells of focused work and dedicated family time. As the days turned into months, the fabric of our daily lives began to shift. Perhaps one of the most unexpected perks of this new standard was a genuine, meaningful connection formed with my colleagues despite the virtual barriers. We began sharing snippets of our home lives, whether it was a pet photo or a glimpse of our makeshift home offices. It wasn't just about work anymore, it was about navigating the shared human experience. My coworker Linda struggled with anxiety and found solace in our monthly wellness check-ins, allowing her to share her struggles without judgment. I saw how flexible work made room for empathy, creating a more profound company culture rooted in understanding and support. But I also felt the sharp edge of isolation lurking just beyond my doorstep. As the seasons changed and social gatherings became sparse, I began to wonder, could I maintain the momentum I had built? I found myself clenching my coffee cup with a tinge of doubt, grappling with what isolation might mean in terms of my career and creativity. It was then, on one particularly gloomy day, that a heartfelt message from Linda arrived, reminding me of the power of adaptability in both work and life. The drum of uncertainty began to echo louder, and I realized that the line between work and home was as thin as a fog that enveloped the day, often obscuring the way forward. At this juncture, my journey illuminated a glaring question: how do we make flexible work sustainable? As I pondered this, I resolved that the next step was to join forces with my colleagues to carve out strategies that addressed the challenges we faced collectively. These conversations ignited a spirit in our team that wasn't just about working harder but about working smarter, finding a dynamic equilibrium between autonomy and togetherness, ultimately fostering a workplace that thrived on adaptability. My perspective on remote work. When I first heard about remote work, I was skeptical. The idea of trading a bustling office for a quiet home, a warm cup of coffee for the roar of keyboard at a collective workspace, felt oddly lonesome and stagnant. I remember sitting on my plush, green couch, laptop perched on my knees like a restless pet, thinking about the vibrancy that came alive in a shared environment. But as I settled into a new routine, I realized that this era wasn't merely about the absence of an office. It was a transformative shift that required a re-evaluation of my work-life conundrum. Right from the onset, working remotely revealed itself as a double-edged sword. On one hand, I savored the newfound autonomy. I could start my day on my terms, sipping tea, setting aside time for a workout, or even indulging in a bit of childhood nostalgia with Saturday morning cartoons. The paradox of more time yet more distractions played a subtle game with my productivity. It was then that I introduced the focused hours to my routine, dedicated blocks of time devoid of outside noise, emails, or chattering family members. A simple pacing of those golden hours became the bedrock of my efficiency, and this realization was monumental. However, it wasn't long before remote work started throwing curveballs my way. I would go through phases of isolation, where the absence of casual water cooler conversations weighed heavily on my mind. I missed those spontaneous brainstorming sessions where ideas flowed like wine at a dinner party. One day, I caught myself talking to my houseplants as if they were coworkers. That's when I decided it was time to actively cultivate connections. Virtual coffee breaks and frequent video calls became essential threads in the fabric of my remote existence. I learned to leverage technology to bridge the gap created by distance, and it rekindled a sense of camaraderie in a professional landscape that had dangerously tipped toward solitariness. As I ventured deeper into this remote realm, I began to notice the underlying shifts in culture. The boundaries between work and home life blurred into an array of colors I had not anticipated. It challenged me to redefine my value system and prioritize what truly mattered. Suddenly, employee wellness became intertwined with productivity, and I found myself championing causes like mental health days and flexible schedules. Engaging in discussions about self-care and well-being not only benefited me personally, but also fostered a more empathetic work environment. I could see this approach influencing others, reshaping a culture that resonated more with balance and understanding. As I sit and reflect on this ever-evolving journey, a palpable tension stirs within me about the future of remote work. With companies now contemplating a hybrid approach, I can't help but ponder, will we lose the momentum we've built? Will the focus on work-life balance fade as the hustle and bustle of office life creeps back in? I imagine a fine art balancing act, a dance between the convenience of remote work and the need for in-person collaboration. This uncertainty, while daunting, leaves me with excitement. Like a tightrope walker preparing for a leap, I am both anxious and invigorated by the possibilities ahead. No matter the outcome, one thing remains clear: remote work in all its nuance and complexity has reshaped not just my career, but the way I perceive my role in an interconnected world. Implementing flexibility in your life. Life, as I have come to learn, is a curious blend of chaos and opportunity. My own journey has taught me that flexibility is not just an idea, it's a necessity. I remember vividly a time when I rigidly adhered to a meticulously planned schedule. Each day was laid out like a blueprint, leaving no room for deviations. Yet, as life had it, my plans crumbled like sandcastles in the tide. A sudden illness in the family forced me to reassess everything I thought I knew about control. In the weeks that followed, I found myself balancing hospital visits, work commitments, and the emotional weight of supporting my loved ones. At first, I felt overwhelmed. But as I slowly began to adapt, I realized that flexibility didn't mean surrendering my goals. It meant embracing the ebb and flow of life. There's a certain kind of empowerment in learning to pivot, to change course when the tide shifts. It's like a dance, certainly not a choreographed performance, but a beautiful improvisation where sometimes you lead, and at other times, you simply follow. Adopting flexibility introduced me to the concept of mental resilience. Studies show that those who can adapt to stressful situations are often healthier and happier. I started to explore ways to integrate this flexibility into my daily life. Small changes, like allowing myself to deviate from a routine or being open to last-minute plans, began to pave the way towards a richer, more spontaneous existence. For instance, on a whim one weekend, I joined friends for a hiking trip instead of sticking to my usual relaxation at home, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions I made all summer, a reminder that sometimes, the best adventures could arise when plans are tossed aside. However, it's not always easy to embrace this mindset. There are days when my commitment to flexibility feels like standing on a tightrope, balancing expectations with realities. The thought of letting go can be daunting. What if it leads to chaos? What if I lose control? Yet, as I faced those fears head-on, I discovered a liberating truth. Acknowledging that I can't control everything won't lead to disaster. Instead, it opens the door for unexpected joys. The more I practiced, the more I found a delightful tension in not knowing what tomorrow would bring. Each day transformed into a canvas, waiting for me to splash it with spontaneity. But then, there came a day when that tension escalated. I received an urgent call about a job opportunity that I had long desired. The catch? It required me to relocate, immediately. The plan I had carefully crafted for my career and personal life swayed dangerously, like a tree in a storm. Anxiety clawed at me as I weighed my options. Here I was, preaching flexibility, yet I found myself numb, paralyzed by the fear of change. I was faced with the ultimate test of my newfound mindset. In that moment of uncertainty, I paused. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and imagined my life pivoting, like a dancer effortlessly spinning into a new rhythm. I envisioned the possibilities that awaited me. With my heart racing, I began to list all the potential benefits, allowing hope to take root in my uncertainty. This pivotal moment, this decision, became not just about a job but about reclaiming my power over life's unpredictability. In choosing flexibility, I reminded myself that life doesn't always present us with neat packages. Sometimes, it requires us to scramble and create something beautiful from chaos. Thank you for joining us on this journey through how to enjoy your life and your job, finding balance and joy in work and everyday life. We hope these insights and strategies inspire you to create a more joyful and balanced life. Remember, finding happiness and fulfillment is a continuous journey, and each step you take brings you closer to living a life you love. If you found this audiobook helpful, please share it with others and consider leaving a review. Stay tuned for more enlightening content from Mindful Literary. Until next time, embrace the joy in your journey.